Good evening, and welcome to Pynchon Pals, a podcast about finally reading Thomas Pynchon. My name is Patrick Fiorilli, and I'm joined, as always, by Andrew Tillett.
Hello.
And Duri Long.
Good evening.
Up at the top, we'd like to thank our supporters at patreon.com/PynchonPals, where you can sign up for $5 a month to hear exclusive bonus episodes like our recent watch of, what was the last thing we did? Who Framed Roger Rabbit? That's the last thing we watched, and our upcoming watch for the month of July of the original King Kong from back in the 1930s, a book that, a movie that comes up in this book. On tonight's episode, we are discussing sequences 3.3 through 3.5 of Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow, a book we are all reading for the first time. I remarked to Duri as I was reading this chapter, or these sequences the other night, that this book is a book where you think you know what it's about, and then it just keeps being about new and different things. Every time you open the book, it seems to be about something else. Do y'all relate to that sentiment?
Yeah, I think so. I think we get in this third sequence that we read for this episode, it starts out with a lot more about chemical bonds. We get a lot more chemical talk, and I'm like, oh yeah, the chemical talk. I'm comfortable in this space. And then instead of really long molecule names, we start getting thrown cryptic symbols that are part of an alphabet. I don't know. And we basically get all of our molecular talk transferred into language talk.
Which is, it does feel a little bit like this is Thomas Pynchon's cooking with gas now. It's like we have circled back around to the themes of loss of communication and sort of entropic breakdowns of information, but we've arrived at it sort of around through like petrocapitalism in an interesting way. We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, I feel like Pynchon is continuing to work with the same themes even across books. So in some sense, it's not about something entirely new, but at the same time, we're on page 319 and we are getting new main characters. So in that case, I feel like I do relate to what you said, Patrick.
Yeah. Well, we've got plenty to cover tonight, so shall we jump into a summary of sequence 3.3?
Let's go.
Alrighty. Deep in the mines that dot the Harz Mountains, the Schwarzkommando, or Zone Hereros, have organized into communities collectively known as the Edgefeinhole, or Aardvark Cave, or Cavity. There now exist several factions. Opposite one group, led by our acquaintance Enzian, the Ingwarorerue, and devoted to the production of a rocket which will carry their people beyond time itself, stands another group, known as the Empty Ones, commanded by Josef Ombindi of Hanover, and keen on the completion of the German colonial project, that is, by quote-unquote racial suicide. Enzian and Ombindi carry on erotically charged discussions comparing the former's eternal center to the latter's final zero. We hear some Herero cosmology about the death and resurrection of the sun and miscommunication with the moon, and learn that Enzian was born out of wedlock to the Russian sailor, also the father of Chicherin, and has led a life marked by exiles and returns. We also discover that Blacero is a punning code name for none other than side character in a side plot in another novel, former Lieutenant Weissman, who may or may not be dead by now. I bet he's not dead. Beset by enemies on all sides, Enzian travels to Hamburg on a mission to aid a Schwarzkommando cell before Ombindi can do the same.
What a doozy.
It's a great chapter.
Oh, everything comes back around in Thomas Pynchon. You thought we were rid of V?
We get a lot of V.
There is indeed a lot of
the next
V.
one. Not the next one, the one after the next one.
Oh yeah, the
yeah,
one
there's a nice little romp in the middle here, and then things got complex again.
the one in the middle is like a 7-minute Looney Tunes short, and then we're back in it.
The fact that these 3 sections we read are, I guess, if they become the 3 main characters of this part of the book, you've got Inzian battling other Zone Hereros for ideological control. You've got Chicherin having his Dark Night of the Soul, and Slothrop in a hot air balloon throwing pies is a classic.
Yeah, how many times have we said, oh, this is surely the main character of the book?
You know, I think at this point we can say that Tyrone Slothrop is here.
He's on the board, yes.
But, you know, we haven't heard from Roger Mexico in quite some time.
Do you guys remember when we thought Pirate Prentice was going to be important?
Where is Pirate Prentice?
Well, just you wait, Andrew. He might come back around.
Surely. I'm begging.
We might close with another banana breakfast.
That's true. Thomas Pynchon, I don't think a single image or symbol has not recurred at least once in this book, except the banana breakfast. I feel like that is the only kind of singular moment that has not been returned to, and I do not expect it to be returned to until the end of the book, because that is the kind of cyclical waveform that Pynchon seems to be operating on here. That one's got a really long frequency.
Banana Brenner is going to hit.
I was like, Pynchon-esque in me was like, what does Andrew think Yul Brynner is going to show up at some point in this novel? And I was like, oh no, breakfast for dinner. I got there.
I don't know if I fully did. Until you just explained that.
You know, breakfast for dinner?
I've never heard Brenner before.
Only
brunch and
Brenner.
Lunch, Linner.
What is
Linner? Lunch for dinner. It's like sort of
That's
something
just
between
dinner.
like a 3 p.m. meal.
But that's not
What?
lunch for dinner.
It's something that occurs between lunch and dinner.
Yeah, but Brenner
That's
is
like
breakfast for dinner.
But brunch is sort of between breakfast and lunch.
Linner sounds like something the hobbits eat.
I might be a hobbit. Who knows?
Well, this is the difference between dinner and supper, you know?
Mm.
I'm from a part of the country where we have supper.
I never really understood supper.
I've had supper a few times in my life.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, diving in. I once again was kind of reminded of Dune when reading this epigraph from
this
the
epigraph
Tales of the
was-
Schwartz Commando.
Steve Edelman is our Princess of Rulon. I don't
Yes,
know
absolutely.
how he's going to come up again, but
Yeah, he hasn't come up before. Correct me if I'm wrong. I do
I'm
not
not
remember
aware
seeing
of him.
Steve Edelman's
I don't think
name.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, I was. This felt like an excerpt from the Revised Orange Catholic Bible, and I
Tales
did
of
look up
Muad'Dib.
previously. Yeah, I feel like I thought I found another Dune reference earlier.
The Ornithopters.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think Thomas Pynchon was a Dune fan.
I'd buy it.
That's my claim.
IG Farben is harvesting spice.
Reddit, come for me if you disagree.
So yes, after the epigraph, so we know that I guess the story of our Zone Hereros here passes on into history. This is one of those moments where this has happened very occasionally, and I think it happened a couple times in V as well, where it seems clear that the narration is taking place sometime after the events of the story, or that the narrator has insight into what will happen more so than is contained in the narrative, because presumably this book is not being published contemporaneously with these events. It must happen later, I guess. Which is a little bit at odds with the fact that most of this book is written in present tense. So it makes it feel like it's all happening right now in the moment. But, I think this goes... There's a lot of discussion of time and the abolition of time in history in this very chapter. So I think that all kind of plays together.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the quote in this epigraph where they say, what are these data if not direct revelation? Where have they come from if not from the rocket which is to be? How do you presume to compare a number you have only derived on paper with a number that is the rocket's own? Which I thought really spoke to some of what we talked about with Roger Mexico and his relationship to data as there's no greater force at work here. We need to focus on the data. The data is the sort of revelation, and this idea that, I don't know, something about the relationship of scientists to the natural world that you're presuming that, the value that you've calculated is the best value, but really what you need to do is pay attention to what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like this was an important quote. Especially there's another quote later on in these chapters that talks about God and data. We'll get there when we get there. Oh yeah, there's no difference between the behavior of a god and the operations of pure chance, which I also felt like connected to this idea of data as a almost divine revelation.
Yeah, and this kind of messianicism of the rocket itself, the rocket is the promise of salvation, I suppose. In a certain way. I guess we'll get into the theological implications of the rocket when Enzian starts talking to Yosef, but it's sort of set up here.
Mm.
So the thing we learn about the Zone Hereros, they have been here in Germany for 2 generations. They are several generations removed from these Rhinish missionaries who brought them from German Southwest Africa. Again, for those of you who have not read V, go read B. We'll give you another chance right now to go read all of V and listen to our episodes, but then come back. Welcome back. What is now modern day Namibia. Real ethnic group, of course, that Thomas Pynchon is pulling from. And a lot of these mythological or cosmological references, Weisenberger notes come from, I think I've mentioned this source before, but there's a particular book on sort of Herero belief systems by Litting, I think is the name of the scholar that was written in the 30s. So that's where a lot of these, the bit about the aardvark hole that we'll get to, and the bit about killing the sun and the communication with the moon, most of that is taken from this book, sometimes word for word, in fact.
If there's one thing I've learned about Thomas Pynchon, it's that he loves drawing on a source.
Indeed, he does.
I'm glad he's not abandoned those roots from V entirely, of just finding a book, reading it, and then writing a little book summary in his chapter for you.
Yeah, the Weisenberger companion also notes that some of the references to landmarks around this part of Germany seem to be taken from a Baedeker's guide to northern Germany or whatever.
Well, I was wondering that. I feel like there were so many little town names. I was like, did Pynchon go to this area in Germany, or did he get a map and just circle some interesting sounding town names nearby?
Well, as Reading Rainbow teaches us, you take a look in a book and it can transport you anywhere you want to go in the world.
And that could be northern Germany.
Yeah. I did read at least one essay, which I'll link in the show notes, about sort of Thomas Pynchon's relationship to, I guess you could say, writing the other. or like his relationship to appropriating cultural symbolism that is not his own, and how, you know, it was the contention of the author of this essay, whose name I'm blanking on, but again, I'll mention it in the show notes, that like Thomas Pynchon does a pretty good job, all things considered. And part of that is this kind of like speaking to things that are sort of like definitively recorded as factual, and then, you know, having honest and open characters like reacting to that kind of this genuine culture, rather than purely making it like exoticizing and alienating. Like there's, and also of course, given the sort of real kind of anti-colonial or post-colonial weight that he is giving some of these themes, definitely makes it seem more sincere and on the level than just set dressing.
Yeah, I thought there was something maybe interesting happening here with how these myths are being, like these cultural myths are sort of being appropriated. I don't know if appropriated is the right word, but reused to kind of justify or provide backing for political aims with these Herero groups, which is something that happens in all over politics. But I thought this was a particularly interesting example of it. If you have these kind of like long-standing cultural beliefs, and then these groups that are sort of 2 generations removed from this history are kind of reusing these myths to define kind of both like more contemporary religious, contemporary is maybe not the right word either, slightly different religious beliefs, and also to define their kind of like political aims.
Yeah, well, their whole deal is that they have also been acculturated to like Western European iconography. The one of the first things we learn about them, the narrator writes, they were gently experimented with, exposed to cathedrals, Wagnerian soirees, Jaeger underwear, trying to get them interested in their souls. Others were taken back to Germany as servants, etc., etc. So there's like, I mean, you know, it is not a coincidence that our 2 representative principal characters are Oberst Enzian and Josef Ombindi, sort of the cross-cultural names there.
Yeah, you have this sort of forced cultural fusion, but also this use of myths from, I guess, both cultures to kind of justify political aims.
Oberst is a title, Patrick. It means colonel.
Oh, right, yeah. But isn't it also sometimes a last name? Or am I just thinking of Connor Oberst?
I think you're thinking
Bright
of Connor
Eyes?
Oberst.
I guess it could be a last name. I think in the case it was used in the stuff we talked about last time, he was being probably referred to as the colonel of the Schwarzkommando.
I think you are correct, yeah.
So do we want to talk about the Aardvark hole?
You'll probably talk about the Aardvark hole.
Y'all know anything about aardvarks beyond Arthur?
A-A-R-D-V-A-R-K.
Now, see, that's definitely copyrighted.
Are you going to have to copyright strike that?
I don't know. You could just spell aardvark.
Slow it down a little bit.
A-A-R-D-V-A-R-K.
That's just how you spell aardvark.
Yeah, that's the one aardvark I know is Arthur and his family.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't say I know very much about aardvarks.
Do they eat, are they like ants? Do they eat ants? Are they like ant eaters? Yes.
I think they eat ants, but they're not anteaters.
But they do have the big nose like an anteater, except for Arthur the aardvark, who does not.
Some similarities, I guess.
Yeah, anteaters have a much bigger, longer snout.
But this guy, they subsist on ants and termites as well. They're kind of cute.
There is no section on Gravity's Rainbow on the Wikipedia page for aardvarks, which seems like there should be.
Is Max Rebo an aardvark? Is that the other aardvark we know?
No, he's more of a big blue elephant. Not to be confused with the other species of big blue elephants
But I
in
think
Star Wars.
aardvarks are related to elephants, actually.
But it says here in German that they're Erdschwein, so they must be more like pigs.
And they'd have a piggy nose.
No, it says here, yeah, the aardvark is not closely related to the pig.
But I think they are related to elephants.
Elephant shrews, yeah, it seems they're related
to. They are. They have a common ancestry.
Yeah, they're actually
Part of
related
the same
to
superorder Afrotheria.
Elephants and manatees.
Wow.
And aardvarks.
Wow, they really spread out.
God, I want to go to the family reunion. Does it also include hyraxes?
I don't know what a hyrax is, so I didn't bring that one up. Oh,
it's like
they're kind of cute too.
A weird mammal that like hangs out on rocks in like Central Asia, I think.
It is hanging out on a rock right here.
Yep. He's cute too. Well, this is just a delightful, what'd you say, super genus?
Super order, I think.
Super order. Just a delightful super order.
That has very little to do with the purpose that aardvarks are used in this book. I got to admit, as
you
delightful
want to tell us about that, Patrick?
Not at all related.
Yeah. So the various cells in the Harz Mountains, at least I assume it's just the ones near Nordhausen that sort of Enzian is in charge of, are collectively known as the Erdschweinhöhle, or Aardvark hole, cave, hollow, cavern, however you want to translate it, which is a bitter Herero joke, the narrator tells us, about a particular sort of group of the Herero people, the Ovachimba, who have no cattle or villages and sort of subsist off of like foraging food on the what is it, the veld?
The veld.
Much like the aardvark, I suppose. And so the aardvark is like a kind of sacred totemic animal. This, I think, is a real like subgroup of the Herero people. This is something Thomas Pynchon has taken from real life or one of his sources on Herero culture, as is this myth of the woman who has miscarried like 3 or 4 times and so is planted in the ground and feels a connection to the earth. And so the zone Hereros here have sort of taken that connotation for their current existence. Why do we think they've alighted on this bitter joke?
Do aardvarks live underground?
I think they burrow.
Well, I mean, I guess if you have a group in your community who are known to, or I guess are, I don't have a clue what the phrase I'm trying to say is, are known in relation to the aardvark. That's not really exactly what I'm trying to say. And then you're brought to Germany sort of as, it says that they've been brought in a couple of waves with the missionaries as servants, and then also in, I guess, Enzian's group, in an attempt to make up some juntas to fight in the colonies in Africa, sort of symbolizing your, I guess, lowness on the social hierarchy of Germany. And then they're also forced to live in caves, apparently like aardvarks do.
Yeah, I think the relationship here, I guess, to the end of this myth, according to the companion, is that after she was dug out of the aardvark hole, this woman was able to give birth and have healthy children after suffering these several tragedies. And so I guess there's also an implication here that, like, there is the healing property of connecting to the underground, like the earth as a powering force.
Yeah, I think that's. I had a long moment of silence when you asked why they took this on, because I was pondering that sort of implication of fertility and hope and its relationship with the Herero people or the faction that has decided to sort of commit self-genocide or self-suicide.
Genocide?
Group suicide?
Yeah, by sort of having a variety of abortions and avoiding having sex or creating children. So I was kind of confused about the relationship between this sort of like fertility symbol and then this particular faction that is sort of overtly anti-fertility.
Yeah, I suppose the implication is that Enzian's group sees themselves as sort of the disenfranchised, the lowest of the low, who will one day be sort of reborn out of the earth, whereas we have the other group, the empty ones that we get to, who take the opposite approach. And of course, this book has been fascinated since the jump with this idea of things having opposites, or at least Ned Pointsman, remember him, was fascinated by things having opposites.
Sidebar, when I said that aardvarks could dig, they burrowed, I failed to mention that they're really good burrowers.
You gotta give them their due.
Like, extremely fast. They can dig like a 5-foot hole in like 60 seconds.
Whoa.
Like, they're very speedy diggers. So, just, for what that's worth. I didn't want to sell them short.
So I guess you could, as a person, physically climb into an aardvark hole of...
The aardvark, their burrows are typically 40 feet long.
Okay, you can really get into an aardvark hole.
Yeah, you can fit several people into an aardvark hole.
Right, okay. Yeah, so anyways, that gets us to the line here. Back in Sudvest, the Erdschweinhola was a powerful symbol of fertility in life, but here in the zone, its real status is not so clear. We learn Enzian is the leader, or more properly translated, one who has been proven, but there are those who, I guess, mistrust his father's European heritage. But kind of everybody has mixed heritage at this point. Or at least many of the zone Hereros. I liked this line, that they have been growing an identity that few can see as ever taking final shape. The rocket will have a final shape, but not its people.
And so we have these two factions. So Enzian is leading this faction that's going to be reborn out of the reborn out of the earth.
And the rocket.
And the rocket, which we can maybe speak more on. And then there's the other faction, the Otukungurua.
Yeah, Otukungurua.
Yeah, which means something like empty ones or empty vessels.
Yes, using an inanimate prefix, which, again, Pynchon has taken from, I think, a particular dictionary, that there are prefixes for inanimate and animate and people things.
Felt myself called. I was feeling like a whole new meaning was being lent to the focus on inanimacy in V.
Mm-hmm.
If Pynchon knew this prefix all along. And they refer to them as revolutionaries of the zero, because they are trying to have a negative birth rate and finish the genocide that the Germans started.
Yeah, so this, interestingly, comes from... I don't know exactly if it comes from this. I'm a little unclear where the like, I have a source here in the companion of Steenkamp's sort of treatise entitled "Is the Southwest African Herero Committing Race Suicide?" Which is the title of sort of a monograph about this very question and the declining birth rates of the Herero people. And so it would seem like, I guess what I'm saying is it is not clear to me from the companion, and I can't tell whether this is just like people looking at declining birth rates likely caused by colonialism and imperialism and going like, this is a group of people driving itself to extinction, or whether like there was genuinely a faction of Herero belief towards not having children and sort of like dying out as a people. That's not really clear to me from the Weisenberger, but suffice it to say, this was something that I guess at least some people were talking about.
Yeah, and there's this sort of musing in the book about sort of what's a colony without the people in it, what's the colony without the colonized, and kind of muses about the purpose of colonization. And I think Pynchon's conclusion is that it's not so much about, having the land or the resources. That's part of it, but the bigger part of it is sort of having the people to subjugate and compare yourself against and visit this sort of exotic, quote unquote, land, and then return home to your like pristine home country. And that is the appeal of colonialism.
Yeah, he refers to colonies as outhouses of the European soul. And then, hits hard on the fact that there's no reason to have a colony if there's no cheap labor, or I guess people in the colony to sell your finalized industrial product to.
It's kind of made me think back to our friends, the dodos, and how they were exterminated. Like the Dutch were successful in that extermination campaign. And then do you lose interest once the dodos are gone? Like what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, this seems to be kind of our narrator here's critique of Marx to some extent, which is like the drive toward death might actually be the final goal of the colony, even more so than like the labor market that it opens up.
Well, yeah, and it's like the critique is sort of that it's not just the overseas market. It's much more than that. It's like an ethos. It's a othering.
It's a what would Ned Pointsman call it? An abreaction.
Mm-hmm. Like the seeing of an opposite of yourself.
I do like our cartoonish Karl Marx who shows up. Wait a minute here. Yes, it's Karl Marx. That sly old racist skipping away.
I feel like this particular paragraph helped dial in for me also some of what Pynchon has talked about with regards to tourism in V largely, but also in some of the other books, and its relationship to colonialism. And if it was really just about like exploiting the overseas market, why would, you have these sort of droves of tourists coming in to experience this land? I think that's part of the kind of like othering, exoticizing.
Yeah. Well, and it relates back to this taking death and turning it into more death transfigured. You're not just extracting resources in order to make new life out of them. You are sort of consolidating and perfecting death as a method. And it seems that Ombindi's Zone Hereros have kind of taken that to heart as an ideology. The narrator writes, the empty ones now exiled in the zone, Europeanized in language and thought, split off from the old tribal unity, have found the why, that is, of their condition just as mysterious.
Can we talk a little bit more about Inzian's faction? Specifically, their relationship to the rocket. I think I was having a little bit of a hard time parsing the sort of Aardvark faction and their relationship to the rocket and time.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you think their relationship to the rocket is?
Kind of unclear. What is unclear to me is every Schwartz commando, are all of the Zone Hereros former Schwartz commandos? Because Inzian's group definitely is, right? Like, they're living in the shadow of Mittelwerk. They've got their hands on some of the documentation. Like, they're looking to, it seems, to build their own rocket. And I guess it's unclear to me if Ombindi is just a leader of Zone Hereros who weren't necessarily part of the war, or if they're just not interested in the rocket anymore, if they've given that up, where Inzian is trying to hold on to that.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because one of the first lines we get is that the Schwarz Commando these days, it's no longer a military title; they are a people now, Zone Hereros. But then we do get the idea that towards the end, when Ombindi seems to be heading over to Hamburg from Hanover, it is in order
that are. Yeah, there's some groups that are on the fence between these. There's sort of three groups. There's empty ones, Inzians, Erdfein, Hollerin, and there's some neutrals. But I mean, we saw that when it explains how the Herero made it to Germany, it says that the first groups came with the missionaries and as servants, but then in 1933, most of the present-day leadership arrive, and they were brought over by Nazis to set up, I guess, for training to eventually become juntas back in Namibia.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that that group is certainly the group that becomes Schwartz Commando.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if random 40-year-olds who've been like servants in German households suddenly become enlisted, you know?
I think you're probably right there. Although it definitely seems like the empty ones, though they have a desire for this kind of extermination, like where is it? Towards the end, Inzian says that like Ombindi has Hanover where the Volkswagen factory is, or something along those lines. So, like, they also desire a kind of industrial base to some extent, and just like a popular base across Germany for, I guess, some purpose or other. Or maybe they're just like, if they're denying Inzian's faction the industrial basis, they are winning. Like, they're not actually interested in the factories. They're interested in Inzian not getting the factories because that would help them with the rocket.
I suppose we'll eventually get a chapter of him going to Hamburg.
Yeah. Maybe Slothrop will end up there.
As far as the actual rocket goes, it seems like they want to build their own.
I think our biggest clue here so far is actually, I realized as I was reading this that the part of the tour that Slothrop went on / hallucinated in Mittelwerk, where he's going through the rocket state, is not the German rocket state. I think it's the Zone Herero rocket state. Like, it's their idea of the spacesuits and the rocket salvation, because it is centered around their quarters in Mittelwerk.
Oh, interesting. So you think they made the space opera?
I think they made the space opera. Is the thing I'm thinking here. Because given that they're also talking about sort of like the power of the capital R rocket. And I think it mentioned the like calabashes strewn around the room or something. So I don't know that was like properly sort of German space program as much as it was. This is the zone Herero cosmology.
Interesting.
Maybe. I might be wrong about that. But yeah, suffice it to say, they definitely want to build a rocket. I'll be interested to see how much of this, like, you know, in an American context, there has long been, especially like around the time this book was written, there was a large aesthetic movement of like Black futurism and Afrofuturism and sort of like Afro-optimism around the possibilities of space and speculative fiction and science fiction, and I'll be curious to see if or how this book engages with that, since it's like roughly contemporaneous with this book being written, that like Sun Ra was doing Space is the Place, and you know, the Parliament Funkadelic was doing you know, rolling with sci-fi themes.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But again, that's like a very American context, and clearly that is not necessarily what is going on with the zone Herero.
Well, yeah, but Thomas Pynchon was
American. But Thomas Pynchon's American.
Yeah.
Do we think that this relates to our friend Nora Dodson Truck's ideology of the zero?
Oh, I'd forgotten about her.
There's a lot of different things I think you could call ideologies of the zero in this book.
Ed Pointsman.
They're starting to run together in my mind. I'm not so sure about the book. They're running together in my mind.
I'd have to go back and read more about Nora.
Well, I mean, we didn't really get much of it at the time.
I'm not sure if I know what her ideology of the zero is. I feel like I've got a much better handle on Indians.
Yeah.
Or no, not Indians.
Or no, not the other groups. The empty vessels.
Yeah, the empty ones.
So we get kind of a dialogue between...
Very Socratic in more ways than one.
Enzian and Ombindi, who's the leader of the other faction.
Mm-hmm.
Ombindi is asking Enzian...
I guess we don't know if he's the leader of the empty ones, but it says that one of the empty ones in particular, Enzian, is directly in sort of conflict with. They discuss the relationship between this eternal center that Enzian is looking for. The Erdschwein Hola will not be bound like the rocket to time. People will find the center again, the center without time, the journey without hysteresis, where every departure is a return to the same place, the only place. And then he thinks about his discussions with Ombindi about the quote-unquote most erotic thing there is, a non-repeatable act. It embraces all deviations in one single act. And of course, he's talking about suicide.
None of the empty ones are actually committing suicide, though. Right?
They're just not procreating.
They're all just abstaining from reproductive sex.
They say it's a tribal suicide, not a Christian suicide or something like that. So collective death rather than a individual one. I think they bring up the lemmings at some point, which is a slightly different, like, it's a more active suicide.
Yeah.
Going off the side of a mountain than like the more passive collective suicide of just choosing not to procreate.
Although infamously it was like...
I know, the lemmings are not what we thought they were.
The Disney company pushed the lemmings off the cliff.
Lemmings and the Luddites are not what we've been led to believe.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely returned to some themes that we've seen several times in this book of kind of quote-unquote sexual deviance and its relationship to, I don't know, like ecstasy or like moving out of the self to a kind of place beyond time or outside of history. Like, this is even kind of what Brigadier Pudding is doing, that he is moving through the trauma of history through sort of sexual deviancy, or at least this is what Ned Pointsman has him doing. And of course, Enzian has been, as we already know, has been kind of influenced, shall we say, by Captain Blacaro.
Should we talk about Captain Blacaro?
Yeah, I suppose so. Do we need to? Well, let's just mention that there's a song here called "Sold on Suicide." That again, it seems like no one is actually singing, but just kind of appears into the narrative.
Here. Yeah, there's a lot of reflections, I guess, on this next page between like, I got a little lost in this.
I liked the meridian of Tibet to Switzerland.
I liked that as well.
It's being the like neutral meridian, or the intentionally set up neutral meridian of sort of Western Empire.
They talk about being able to like travel in the interior of the earth, and that we would be able to like travel between meridians by passing through the interior.
Mm-hmm.
There's continuing a lot of like white, black imagery. I feel like milk shows up several times.
Mm-hmm. And there's also some reflections of Gailey and Slothrop's conversations about what is it? It's not apparatuses. What is the thing? Arrangements? Yeah, that there's new maps of the Earth, or a kind of reconciliation of geopolitics through the image of like Gondwana land or sort of Pangeatic continental drift. Which I was intrigued to see come up, given that, of course, our theme music is horology off of the album Polygon Dwana Land by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Wow. Everything comes back together.
Everything comes back together.
We talk about the moon as a bringer of evil in Herero tradition. I feel like we get kind of like a crash course in Herero belief.
Mm-hmm.
This next page, they believe that like each sunset is a battle, which comes back up later in some imagery. I feel like Thomas Pynchon must have loved that. He hates the sun, constantly battling against the sun.
The idea of the sun bleeding and that being the red of the sunset.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely up his alley.
Yeah, red and yellow come up a lot in these 3 chapters.
Yeah, there's something later on about the clouds in the sky looking like shrimp.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a great image.
I can't believe how often Thomas Pynchon has set up people being quote-unquote against the day before he wrote a book called Against the Day. It just never ceases to amaze me.
Sometimes I guess probably just didn't feel like his theme was really getting through there, and he needed to hit it a little bit harder.
Yeah, I liked this. I mean, this is Enzian's whole deal. It's sort of exile and return, death and resurrection. You go away and then you come back always to the same eternal center. This is what the sun does. The companion mentions that there's a lot of belief around sort of northness in Herero belief, that like the land of the dead, the underworld, lies kind of like to the north. And at least one account of initial encounters between the Herero people and European colonizers was like, oh, well, these extremely pale, sort of death-bringing people are clearly sort of from the realms of death and decay. And this is certainly not the first time Pynchon has taken whiteness as an example of, or the color of death.
Very Game of Thrones. I think I've never
Indeed.
read or seen the TV show.
You got it in one. Yeah. Don't bother. You could read the books.
They do have, there's a sentence here on page 327. North is death's region.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's also a, when it talks about killing the sun, how the sun sets in the north, which I was a little confused about. But
I was too.
I guess Namibia is south of the equator, so it does, if it's setting...
It's more north.
Yeah, it is north relatively. Somewhat.
Yeah, Earth is on an axis and all that. This bit about the moon having sort of lost messages.
Well, it was the idea that there was a hare.
Moon rabbit. Everybody's got a moon rabbit.
Moon rabbit.
You know, the rabbit on the moon.
But it's a bad rabbit.
Yeah.
Who?
Not like the noble aardvark. This duplicitous and
rabbit.
Evil rabbit.
He brought death instead of the moon's message. So I think that, jumping onto what you were mentioning at the beginning, Patrick, I feel like we have something already about kind of broken communication.
But this is Oedipa Maas's whole problem, is oh God, every bit of communication can be misunderstood or misinterpreted. How do I know that I am not misinterpreting everything around me?
Or purposefully manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in this case, this duplicitous rabbit was purposefully manipulating the moon's message.
Would you say that this is kind of a courier's tragedy?
Feels very Tristero. Do you think this rabbit is part of Tristero?
Might be.
The true message has never come.
I think it's interesting if you think back to those documentaries that we've been talking about now for several episodes, and I'm sure the listeners have subscribed to the Patreon to hear our full review of at this point. Von Braun and some of those other Nazi engineers talk about being influenced by the movie Frauenmond and sort of wanting to go to the moon. And I think it's interesting that here Inzian and his cohort, when also being presented with a rocket, have immediately jumped to go to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
A wonderful...
Yeah, but they have...
Go ahead, Duri.
I was just going to say they have slightly more mixed feelings about the moon.
That's true.
Where they kind of want to go to the moon, but they also have this myth about this duplicitous hare.
Well, if they could get to the moon directly,
then they
wouldn't
could
have to deal with the
one-on-one
fucking
with
hair.
the moon. Take out the middleman.
You don't need the hair.
And we do have a prominent middleman that comes up later in these sections.
Sorry, who's the prominent middleman?
We'll get there.
Verbindungsmann?
Yeah.
Vimpa?
Oh, yes. Indeed.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We haven't even introduced Blacaro yet.
All I wanted to say really quickly is I do think, again, given the context of when this book was written and the fact that he has come up a couple times, and if we're refracting this through, again, an American lens, the sort of trip to the moon space race stuff takes us back to Slothrop's hallucinatory encounter with JFK a little bit as well.
Was the whole situation where the trip to the moon was a conspiracy, was that a thing at this time, or did that come later?
I think
that happened
the whole time.
Yeah, I felt like that was kind of interesting, the idea that manipulation of information, I don't know.
Yeah.
Felt connected.
Well, but even the idea that going to the moon is kind of a byproduct of the military-industrial complex.
I mean, not kind of. I feel like it's the whole thing that motivated the people who created this rocket.
Yeah.
And I don't know, from the documentaries, it really, really, really felt like Von Braun and some of these other scientists were so deeply motivated by this power or this desire to get to the moon that they were willing to do literally anything to their fellow man to get there.
Yeah. And they do.
Yeah, and they did. Not just willing, and they did. So there is this, like, I feel like that was one of the things that I was really astounded by in the documentaries, because you actually, like, get to hear them speak, and there's this sort of, you don't realize until you kind of get the revelation of what they were implicated in, like this fanatical desire to go to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now in the book, at least, their, I guess, failure has given rise to 3 groups all fighting for the moon, sort of in a way, or all fighting for the rocket who will take you to the moon, right? Like in real life, the Americans and the Russians are going to use that technology. And then in the book, the Hereros as well.
Yeah.
And Slothrop as a subset of the Americans.
Do you think this book is going to end with sort of Slothrop being strapped to the rocket or something?
And sent to the moon, and Slothrop gets to commune with the moon. The real first man in space.
Yeah.
Tyrone Slothrop.
Trying to talk to that there rabbit on the moon. Shall we talk about Blacaro?
At long last.
We have to eventually.
I thought I'd speed things along because we'd gotten through like 4 pages in an hour, but
That's fine.
I was unsuccessful.
Look, we're going to blink and you'll miss it when we talk about this interstitial second sequence.
Boom, boom, boom. Balloon, pies, moving on.
Yeah. So I didn't read this this annotation from earlier when we first came across the name Dominus Blacaro in the companion, but Pynchon's, this is from Weisenberger, Pynchon's source is Grimm's Teutonic mythology. Blacaro is one of many Germanic nicknames for death. Grimm traces the etymology from Bleich, pale, blechend, grinning, and from these derives other nicknames such as Der Blecker, with a grinning death, Der Bleicher, the bleacher, for what death does to bones, etc., etc.
And when I looked up I forget if I looked up, I think I looked up Blicker, which means sort of like shine or gleam or glance. So we have this clear association between like whiteness, death, but also kind of like shininess. Bleaching, a gleam, a glint.
But the important thing here is that we learn that this is the SS codename of Lieutenant Weissman. Captain Weissman now?
And so if we just, refresh the
Who
reader's memory, the
Weissman?
listeners. Well, first of all, Blacaro. We remember Captain Blacaro from back with the whole Hansel and Gretel situation in Katja. Turns out Blacaro is Weissman, who
has shown up in this book once.
But we didn't realize that he was Blacaro.
At Peter Sachs's seance? Is that where Weissman shows up?
I feel like that's where everyone who is anybody was.
It's gotta be. Yeah, if he was a German, I don't know where else he would have shown up. He is a German. I don't know where else he would have shown up as a German.
Yeah, I think he was at the seance, and it turns out, so Weissman, I think we called back to this in that episode.
And Enzian is also there, because it says Weissman is there with his Herero aide.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Weissman was V's lover when V was at Foppel's mansion in the guise of Vera. Was that her name?
Vera
Meroving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The poll.
And where was Foppel's mansion?
Foppel's mansion was in Southwest Africa.
Weissman is also the guy who sneaks into our narrator for that part of the book, whose name is Mondaugen, who we also know from this book. He's the guy who sneaks in wearing a dress and steals his data scrolls
from the
the radio
Spherics.
wave thing.
Yeah.
Spherics, yeah.
Spherics.
Ooh.
It's almost as if he's like, there's like a notion of lost communication with astral or atmospheric phenomena that you're reading. You're reading messages that may not actually be there.
And he was the one who was trying to set up the other guy with Hedwig, right? Mondogan had a buddy that was staying with him.
Yeah, that was the old adventurer who went to Visu.
Oh,
Godolphin.
The dad.
Elder Godolphin.
Yeah.
Elder Godolphin. And didn't Weissman sort of lead Godolphin to craziness?
Yeah, they convinced him that it was his son, and
Yeah,
a lot
as a
of
whole.
wild stuff happened at Foppel's mansion party. Honestly, I don't care, listener, if you haven't read V. I don't care if you read any other part of V. You can just go read that chapter. It's pretty
I think it stands alone pretty
self-contained,
well.
and I think it will be really helpful.
It's like that. What is it? 170-page chapter.
Yeah.
And of course, listen to our episode about it.
Yeah, and then another 3 hours on top of that. However long it takes you to read 70 pages plus 3 hours.
So Weissman's back.
Weissman's back. Back, like, don't call it a comeback. He never left.
And he's just the character I was hoping would come back from V.
Yeah.
That's a joke. Just since no one audibly laughed.
Ha ha ha. I'm too busy thinking about other characters from V.
Literally most other characters of V I would have preferred to come back before this guy.
What if we got like
I feel like
15-year-old Rachel Owlglass?
Whoa.
I feel like based solely on what occurs in V, Weissman is pretty middle of the road. You know?
That's fair. Do you think
like compared to the people at Foppel's party, he's kind of a good guy.
He is dating the embodiment of sort of colonial atrocity, but otherwise...
Yeah, that party's really full of bad characters, though. I don't know if that's a really high bar.
V in that chapter is also probably one of the good characters. There's so many bad people.
Do we think, as I reflect further and further on Mondogan's story, it's a significant portion of the book V, but I feel like it goes with this book.
Yeah.
Do you, I'm curious about the order of the writing, since I know we've talked about how Pynchon was writing, some of these books at the same time. I can definitely see a lot of Crying of Lot 49 and the entropy information stuff showing up in here. I could see those being written at the same time. But then I kind of just feel like that one section of V was written alongside Gravity's Rainbow. I don't know. I was curious about if you knew anything about the writing timeline.
No.
We know that he has gone back in at least the instance of the chapter of V in Egypt. Is that V in Love? No, that's not right. It's not V in Love. It's
Quick Stencil, Quick Change Artist does 8 impersonations or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Quick Stencil, Quick Change Artist. 8 impersonations. That didn't we talk about how that was based off of a short story in Slow Learner?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we know he's already done this a couple of times of being like, this is a good nugget. Let me reapply it. So I don't think it feels like that big of a jump for him to be like, what a V. He's sort of becoming attached. He's clearly become attached to the story of the Hereros while writing V.
Yeah.
And has decided to expand that plot. And then it feels like has written Gravity's Rainbow out of that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the further we go on, I get the sense that this book was maybe written kind of linearly and that we start in one place and then Thomas Pynchon sort of gets interested in different things as he's writing it, or has an idea at some point to revive some older ideas that he had. Like, could I imagine that he writes the section about the conspiracy to broadcast the Schwarzkommando as like a myth to Germany, as then like, oh, that's like a fun way to bring back something that I've written about before. And then several months later, he's like, what if that was actually part of the book? And then sort of kept running with that. Not to say that he doesn't like revise anything, but I can see this book feels like it took a long time to write in that way.
Yeah.
So I can see it. The thing we get here is that Weissman also seems to have this ideology that is pointed toward the rocket as a kind of destiny that Enzian has kind of inherited, it would seem. Which also makes me think about Katja, who has spent a lot of time with Weissman Blacaro. Not to mention Gottfried.
When is Gottfried going to be coming back?
Well, wasn't Blacaro considered Gottfried kind of Enzian's opposite, right? Yeah.
I think he might be rich. We already have, but we now have Enzian's opposite is like Chicherin.
Yes, Gottfried Chicherin.
Whoa.
You can have more than one opposite, I guess. Unless you're Ned Pointsman.
I mean, yeah, aren't Enzian and Chicherin both Slothrop's opposites too, though? Everyone's got three opposites.
Chicherin is also kind of pirate prentice coded.
Ooh.
Oof.
But let's continue on.
Let us continue.
We learn about Enzian's mother, who was sort of brought him back to a village.
Well, not exactly. He and his mom like set off on, well, I'd say they set off on a trek. I think they were sort of forced on a trek as part of the Herero genocide. And then like a great number of Herero people perished in the desert. And then a group of people took him back to the village.
Well, but that was the second return.
That was the second return.
Because first, before his conscious memories began, something took him in and out of his mother's circular village in the Cacao Veld at the borders of the land of death. A departure and a return. He was told about it years later. Shortly after he was born, his mother brought him back to her village, back from Swakopmund. In ordinary times, she would have been banished. So it would seem that like he was set out of the village, and then his mother went and retrieved him, and then
I see, and he was set out of the village because he was born out of wedlock.
Yeah.
I was going to say, this reminded me kind of Jesus, right? Like they go back to, or Jesus and Mary and Joseph go back to Bethlehem for the census, right?
Yep.
And that's sort of what's happening here. He's going back to his mother's hometown to be put into the German record.
Yeah, they even called out as like the Herod myth of Herod trying to kill all the babies to kill Jesus. And then later, he is the only survivor of the excursion that all die in the desert. Whereupon they return him to where he left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he says by the time the question occurred to him, he could find no way to account for his own survival. He could not believe in any process of selection. And this is where that line comes up. There was no difference between the behavior of a god and the operations of pure chance.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was an interesting insight. Yeah, especially as we're dealing with a lot of chance and data and
fairness
and this really reminded me of, I actually, in fact, in the margin, I wrote Rocket / Roger Mexico. I think Enzian and Roger Mexico would find some commonalities.
Enzian assumes Weissman is dead because surely an explosion got him at one point or another. And then fantasizes about Jesus and his rockin' bod. Speaking of appropriations and sort of recontextualizations of European Christian culture, the sacred and the profane mixed again.
Yeah, and they talk about the rocket as like a masculine technology, in case you hadn't put that together yet, based on the imagery that we've had so far in this book. But I thought it was interesting, specifically the sentence that the rocket was an entire system one away from the feminine darkness held against the entropies of lovable but scatterbrained Mother Nature. Which I thought was interesting, not just because the word entropy was missing, but like that they're associating entropy with femininity. I thought was interesting, given our last protagonist of a Pynchon book was Oedipa.
An entropic woman, if there ever was one.
A very entropic woman. And the idea that like the rocket is some sort of like domination over Mother Nature, like we have done something that nobody else has ever done before, like we have created this feat of engineering. I thought this was interesting in concert with that quote from the epigraph, where it's like the rocket asserts dominance over Mother Nature, but then in order to create the rocket, they sort of had to listen to how it interacted with the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this dovetails with the sort of Weissman-led ideas about like devotion to the leader and the sort of sadomasochistic, fascistic elements of Weissman's psyche. Like, of course, yeah, you're devoted to the rocket as one might be devoted to the Führer. It's like a paragon of masculinity and domination.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, like, I think the biggest challenge that they had with the rocket, according to the documentaries we watched, was trying to get it to travel on the trajectory that they wanted it to go on. Like, long before they could do that, they had a rocket that would go up in the air and come down, but they couldn't get it to land where they wanted it to. And even when they were shooting it at London, they still were not really hitting the targets that they wanted to hit. And part of that was bad intelligence, but part of it was being able to like control the rocket to move as they wanted it to. And I think there's a lot going on in this book with vectors. And I feel like at least at some point in this or Crying of Lot 49, we've talked about entropy as like kind of all of these different things moving in different directions and all these different vectors pointing different ways. And the rocket is basically trying to get the rocket to point in the direction that you want it to and land in the way that you want it to.
Well, yeah, without guidance, you leave it up to chance.
But it's chance that is going to work.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The way
the guidance does is you are eliminating the chance by making it hit where you want it to hit through guidance, as opposed to just like,
I guess so, but it's not a guided missile. Like it like goes, like you guide it up into the air, but then at some point it is just falling.
Yeah.
And you don't really have control over that. And it's all about the calculation, I guess. It's all about the data.
Control systems.
What do you mean by control system? Because they don't have control over it, except that they have calculated how it will land.
They've got a guidance system for when it's in flight or when it's powered. Once it's in free fall, I think it's on its own. But they have a rudimentary guidance system for traveling to the like Brynschluss point, because we've talked about the crystal. They mention it in a couple pages, but we've also already talked about the sort of crystal and the feedback. If the crystal moves in one way, the capacitor does something to push it back to the center, and the rocket fins, I guess, steer from that.
Yeah, so I guess like you get to control it up to a certain point, but then after that, like it sort of free fall and you have to trust your data.
Yeah.
So there is, I'm beginning to see like what Pynchon found interesting about this rocket. Like there is sort of a religiosity to the data where you can only control things up to a certain spot, and then you have to trust the numbers.
Well, that's also got to do, like, so I'm going back to that epigraph, like that is where the calculation is important, right? Like you can't take data from the rocket once it's in flight, so you have to trust that once it's at Brennschluss that it will like continue on how you've calculated it will.
Yeah, and that's a leap of faith right there. And we already know that like there were breakdowns in human communication that led to the rocket not landing where they wanted it to, because there was espionage and other things that were feeding false information back to the Germans. So you have this faith that like the rocket's going to land where you intended to, but then breakdowns or manipulation of human communication and data is able to, undermine even the best math. It's that female entropy right there.
Well, and there's a relation to empiricism here. The epigraph is also saying, like, look, if this is the value that you observe the materials, like they're talking about chamber pressures, and it's like, if this is the value that you observe that the materials can handle, it doesn't matter what they should handle. This is what the materials can handle.
Yeah, like this is what's happening in the real world. Like it's this dominance against nature, but it is still dependent on like what's happening in the real world, and it's dependent on like the human infrastructure around it functioning as it should.
Yeah. Kind of like if you were walking down the street and suddenly you saw Jesus Christ and you were very certain that Jesus Christ was walking down the street.
I thought you were going to say you were walking down the street, somebody that you meet.
Oh, more Arthur the
Aardvark reference.
Yeah. No, that would have been funny, but I didn't get there.
I made myself laugh.
But I do think that is part of this like faith thing. Like this is the Enzian's conversation, this like brief little interview section about meeting Jesus on the street. And how, quote, he saw into your soul, all your make-believe ceased to matter. Like that is also this interaction with the rocket, which is like your make-believe numbers about what the ideal values should be are meaningless when you encounter the thing itself. We move into the kind of denouement of this chapter here, I guess, with Enzian talking to Andreas. My underline is kind of over this name here. Orukambe. Yes, I couldn't see if that was an E or an O at the end. Andreas is listening in on, ironically enough, the rocket's Hawaii 2 guidance radio frequency.
No, I think that's interesting, given that the Enzian's group is looking for the, what do they call it? The final center, the great center.
Yeah.
The something center that they're using.
The eternal center.
The eternal center. That's right. That they're using sort of the guidance wavelength to steer the group there.
It's probably a good wavelength. No one's firing rockets anymore. It's not being used for much.
I looked it up. This 50 centimeter band, I think it's kind of around where TVs are at nowadays, sort of in between microwave and TV. Like microwave oven, they're all microwaves, like lowercase m, but in between your microwave oven and your television.
Interesting.
I'm going to be honest, my understanding of radio waves is pretty rudimentary.
Goes up and down.
Frequency is inversely proportional to wavelength. We use different frequencies for different things. 50 centimeters is in between what you use for microwaves and televisions.
Yeah, you know the song Money for Nothing? You gotta install microwave ovens. Yeah. So that's really all about frequency dynamics.
Can you hear the sound between microwaves and TVs? I guess.
No.
I can't hear my microwave, right?
Well, I mean, sounds are vibrations.
Yeah, I think if we could hear that, we'd probably be driven crazy by the amount of microwaves that are just like traveling around at all times. Like before humans, microwaves, just like a lot of microwaves in the atmosphere, I think, at any given time.
I mean, this is what Kurt Mondagen was researching to some extent. His frequency signals related to lightning, electromagnetic
something
frequencies about lightning.
I'll read up a little more on radio waves in my free time. We don't need to waste the listeners' time on that.
Everything is a frequency.
Anyways,
they transmit. So the Erdschwein Hola that Indian lives in transmits outwards between 0300 and dawn, and then after that they transition to become a listening post, and they listen for the other Zone Herero communities in Germany and their transmissions.
Mm-hmm.
And they do hear one.
Yep. This also gets to, I circled this notion of, Indian talks about this day-to-day knitting and unraveling, minor successes, minor defeats, also sounds a lot like the arrangements that Gailey was talking about.
Yeah, I felt like we saw the word knitting and unraveling at some point earlier in this book.
Mm-hmm. Enzian has, quote, the odd feeling in moments of reverie or honest despair that he is speaking lines prepared somewhere far away, not far away in space, but in levels of power, that his decisions are not his own at all, but the flummeries of an actor impersonating a leader. Like he is aboard a ship on a broad river leading a rebellion which must fail. Sounds very Slothropian. Arguably sounds kind of Benny Profane-esque, which is just like, I would prefer to be moved through the world rather than moving through the world of my own accord.
Or this sense of doom,
mm-hmm.
also. Like, he is trying to do something with agency, but has this sense that it's doomed to fail and that there are powers that be that are going to quash it before it has a chance to get off the ground.
So he's having a difficult time. Duri, we were just watching the newest, as of this recording, episode of House of the Dragon.
I was just thinking about that, Patrick.
where one incoming ruler is faced with many sudden problems and day-to-day knittings and unravelings.
I was just thinking, I was trying to think, I was like, there's something else we've been watching recently where the leader has this sense of doom that everything is going to fail and they're like, trying to take a leadership position, but they feel like they're doomed to failure.
Yep.
I think I was thinking of House of the Dragon.
Yep. Yeah, we've already kind of talked about their conclusion here, which is that Enzian is like, well, we need to go help before Ombindi's band can get in there because we don't want them consolidating more power.
Yeah, Andreas poses the question about if it's a trap, and the goal is to lead Enzian, or the goal is to lure Enzian out. He's not very concerned about that. And they also ask about Slothrop, and he says, if he's important, we'll see him again. Which
I feel like it's a good motto for reading Thomas Pynchon, if nothing else. Pirate Prentice, if he's important, we'll see him again.
These French colonial units that occupied the Rhineland after World War I were real. And led to, as you might imagine, like it was very much in a kind of Operation Blackwing way, like an intentional campaign of stoking sort of racial ire and anxiety in the sort of defeated Germany by stationing black colonial units in the Rhineland. Pulling a page from history. And of course, we get some more sort of passed over preterite versus elect stuff. Because why not?
There's a little line here where it says Anzian grabs his kit, swallows 2 pervitins for the road. I looked up what a pervitin was. Turns out it's like an early version of meth.
Yeah.
Nice, he's on speed.
Well, okay, so I kind of went deep here. I feel like this one line really tied a lot of things together for me. Was like, it was a version of meth, but it was meth manufactured by, I think, I don't want to get this wrong, but IG
Farben.
Thank you. If I'm recalling correctly. Yes. No, it was not originally developed by IG Farben. It was from another German company. But then, anyways, it led me down this journey where I didn't really realize this, but Nazi Germany had like a monopoly on chemical drugs. So opioids, meth, etc.
Analgesics, as we learn about soon.
Yes, I looked this up after I'd read that later section, and I was like, oh, some things coming together here that Nazi Germany and the various, companies that supported the state had kind of a monopoly on sort of like pharmaceutical drugs that were like chemically created. And there's a good amount of lore on a lot of people in the Nazi party doing pervitins or meth.
Yeah, I mean, all the Nazi brass, were high as shit all the time.
Yeah, they had very lax drug laws, so it was essentially legal. And then I didn't realize, maybe we've talked about this before. There's so much that comes up in this book that I realize things and then I forget them. That like IG Farben was a real company, produced all of these produced many of these pharmaceuticals that are talked about in subsequent sections, and in addition to like producing gas for gas chambers, and a lot of them were produced with slave labor also. So the development of these like chemical drugs was very tied up in this Nazi institution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was another classic talking point of many a History Channel documentary, was all of the Nazi drug use.
That came up when I was searching for this information, but this was a really classic example of Duri Googles one word that she doesn't know what it means, and really sends me down a rabbit hole, and suddenly is like tying together several things that have been coming up across Pynchon.
Mm-hmm.
Another example of how this book should just be its own 30 credit first year seminar.
Exactly.
Oh, should we do the short chapter now or take a break first?
I think we should break first.
You think we should break first? Okay.
I thought we should just
we should just do it now
through this chapter.
We've only done 15 pages, and then we've got like 30 if we don't do this one now.
Yeah, chitcherine time.
Alrighty, let's go.
We can move through it. Sequence 3.4. Gailey takes Slothrop, who's thinking of his own witch ancestor, up Brocken to see the sunrise. The shadows cast by their AM hanky-panky stretch miles into the clouds as mountain specters. Slothrop is pretty sure Marvy is closing in, so Gailey introduces him to her balloonist friend Schnorp, who agrees to ferry Slothrop across the skies to Berlin. But Marvy's mothers catch up with the balloon in a recon plane, and Schnorp and Slothrop have to fend them off with black market custard pies.
Schnorp.
Great name. Top tier.
Just top tier.
Up there for me with Maggie Dunkirk in this book, who I hope we see again sometime.
This was a lovely little chapter. I struggled through these sections a little bit. There was a lot going on. Very heady, new characters, old characters.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this reprieve that Pynchon offered to us, as he so often does.
Always so good at pacing.
Mm-hmm. I needed a little breath of fresh air, and he gave it to me.
Yeah, so they go up Brocken, which we talked about previously.
Witch Mountain.
The Witch Mountain.
Just been a witchy ceremony, it seems like. Sort of a Nazi witch ceremony. Maybe just a Nazi ceremony.
And turns out that...
Well, no, they ripped the swastikas. I assumed it was an anti-Nazi witch situation. I thought it was what's his name? Captain Von Trapp, sort of like tearing the Nazi flag in two.
Oh, I guess I sort of pictured more of like a raging party where stuff is ultimately being broken, not necessarily like torn down in anger, but more like, yeah, we knocked the flag stand over. We got too rowdy.
That's kind of what I was thinking, but who's to say?
Make of it what you will.
Slothrop recalls that he has a witch in the family tree.
Amy Sprue.
Another good name.
Crazy Sue Dunham was real.
Really?
Yeah. This is Pynchon seems to have some one of his sources is all about Berkshire, the Berkshire Hills, and it mentions Crazy Sue Dunham and these chickens. A lot of ill will about those chickens, as you can imagine.
And Gelly and Slothrop make god shadows.
Sexy god shadows.
Sexy god shadows. It's like the world's largest sort of like shadow. What do they call that with your shadow hands?
Shadow puppets.
Shadow puppets? Is it a puppet if it's just your hand?
Yeah, the puppet is like what's projected. Yeah, shadow puppet.
Okay.
Yeah, the shadow is the puppet.
Okay.
Did you look up the Brock inspectors?
Did I look up what?
The Brock inspector.
No.
Oh, just Google that and look it up. Like, the images are really wild of like what this actually looks like.
I didn't know this was a real phenomenon.
This super real thing. I mean, it happens famously on this mountain, but like it can happen elsewhere as well.
So you just get up above the cloud level, and then as the sun rises, it just projects your shadow onto the moon, and it's also like miles and miles long because of the low angle of incidence.
That's crazy.
Yeah. This is a real thing. You could go do this right now.
It's nighttime when we're recording.
I mean, it takes two to tango, but...
Start hiking now. Get up the mountain.
Yeah, we might be done with this episode by the time you get up there.
It's like spooky.
Yeah.
But also it would make you feel like God.
It's angelic. And there's like a rainbow around it because of the refraction or diffraction, whatever it is.
Wow, I thought they were just making big shadows on the ground. I was like, sure, God shadows.
No, that's why Slothrop says, by golly, it's the Spectre.
That makes more sense. There was a lot going on in these chapters. Some things that got said, I was just like, okay.
Okay, Thomas.
Okay, Thomas, sure, Slothrop, it's the Spectre.
I think it's kind of an unintentional burn when Slothrop asks if Chicharine has ever been up there, and Gelly says, no, he's busy.
That is really... I didn't read it in that particular cadence, but that is very... Really funny. I think that's right. Yeah. Oh, and I'm some kind of drone or something? You're different.
You're different.
Well, he ought to see it. Gailey continues talking about you sort of having a keen eye for what's going on in the zone when she says, referring to the zone Hereros and Chicharine's quest against them, it's hate, all right. Stupid. The war's over. It isn't politics or fuck your buddy. It's old-time, pure personal hate.
Kelly's so smart.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a witch. I think she can see things that the rest of us can't.
Much like a different character in House of the Dragon.
A much less interesting character.
Oh,
frankly.
yeah. Significantly less interesting.
Slothrop becomes concerned. Well, he's rightly concerned that Major Marvey is hunting him, but he becomes concerned that Marvey might be in league with either the Rolls-Royce gang from back
in Zurich.
Back in Zurich, who were, I guess, the English Secret Service, and also General Electric. He seems to forget that the reason Marvey is after him is because he was there when he got punched in the face. Not because he necessarily knows who he is, but
coincidentally, I think Marvey is actually with General Electric.
Yeah, Marvey is with General Electric. That is true, but it's not General Electric who's after Ian Shuffling. It's Marvey who's after Ian Shuffling because he's pissed about getting punched in the face.
Yeah,
unless Lyle Bland is wondering where Slothrop is, and he's contracted General Electric through J.P. Morgan.
I think Slothrop was just in the wrong place at the wrong time in this particular circumstance.
Yeah, the paranoid spiral here is. I was really expecting there to be a Proverbs quote at the end of this, but it doesn't come up.
No.
And we do get a brief explanation of how Slothrop ended up on the top of this mountain when the last time we saw him, he was with a Nazi mad scientist. And the explanation is he just ran away because he began to suspect that they were up to no good.
The temperance that Pynchon shows to not have a Nazi mad scientist episode in this.
You just like drop. That's like a little Chekhov gun situation. You just drop the mention that you have a Nazi mad scientist, and then we moving along.
He'll come back.
We're not going to really dig into his laboratory.
Slothrop doesn't even get like turned into a Frankenstein monster or anything.
Nope, he just leaves in the night.
Yet. We'll see.
We'll see if Zwitter returns.
Gailey's got a great idea about Schnorp, as mentioned. Nobody bothers a balloon. Schnorp tells Slothrop.
Okay, major Wizard of Oz vibes here. We started this book with Dorothy. We're not in Kansas anymore. And now
Slothrop thinks of the Wicked Witch in this chapter.
Yes. He thinks of Dorothy also at one point. Or someone, I remember another Dorothy reference. Anyways, and now he's jetting away in a hot air balloon, which is extremely Wizard of Oz. Is Schnorp the Wizard of Oz? Who's to say? Is Slothrop Dorothy?
Yeah, I think here's one thing. Slothrop is definitely Dorothy in this situation.
Does that mean Gelly is Glinda?
Toto?
Wouldn't she be the good witch?
Gelly as Glinda.
Yeah, I think she might be the good witch.
She is a good witch. Damn, Andrew.
Wow.
I really have my best revelations live on air.
Makes for good podcasting. They get off kind of without a hitch. There's another place where the yellow and scarlet heat catch up. There's more sort of red and yellow. The balloon, I think, is also red and yellow. Yeah,
Slothrop makes a really funny line, a statement about this being a really subtle getaway. Very low key in his red and yellow hot air balloon. No one will spot me up here. While they're in the hot air balloon, he discovers that there's a whole bunch of custard pies in the bottom of the balloon. And Schnorp's sort of ulterior motive for making this trip over to I guess what's going to become East Germany is to sell these pies on the black market.
Yeah, so what he's doing is he tells Slothrop that he should have a PX card or like a post exchange card. So he's buying presumably military, like on base military pastries, and then selling them to other countries or maybe other military bases and installations across the zone, including these pies.
And so they begin to share a pie. Very generous of Schnorp. And then out of the sky, suddenly they begin to hear a song that sounds very familiar.
I love these guys, man.
Oh my God. This was straight out of a movie. I felt like it felt sort of like a Wes Anderson movie. it also felt kind of, I found myself thinking of One Battle After Another again. Like, I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson did a really good job of capturing how well Thomas Pynchon paints the like ridiculousness of certain groups of bad dudes.
Yeah.
Just like,
expand on that.
I don't like, there's just something so cartoonish and funny about the Marvy's mothers and how they are like constantly singing these lewd songs.
They can't stop. It's nearly compulsive.
One long lewd song. These
Yeah, they haven't
these are all
stopped
verses
singing.
to one song.
And they're like, and Marvy is ridiculous too. Like he's like pulling out these like ridiculous lines. Like he's, I don't know, in a Wild Western film. And then like they're sort of blindly following him into this like very expensive and time-consuming chase of a guy that he happened to see on top of a train when he was getting punched in the face.
Unless it's the J.P. Morgan money through Lyle Bland.
That would make more sense, but maybe be less funny. I don't know, just the picture of all these guys like sort of hanging out of this airplane and like chasing this hot air balloon cracked me up, felt like feature film ready.
Yeah.
And reminded me of some of the portrayals in One Battle After Another.
Yeah. I mean, this is practically the chase at the end of Wes Anderson's Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen that movie, but it felt very Wes Anderson nonetheless.
Yeah.
I think Pynchon and maybe drawing on Pynchon, Paul Thomas Anderson are really talented at making men who think they're really big and important look very silly.
I agree.
They escape into a cloud, and Major Marvy cuts the engine so that he can also, I guess, glide into the cloud silently. Not really sure why he would do that.
Because they keep singing.
Yeah, they're not
They don't
quiet.
stop singing.
And also, like a hot air balloon, you don't need to sneak up on a hot air balloon. Like it's not mobile.
Yeah. There's a great line here of the plane is somewhere with its own course and speed. There is no action a balloon can take. Binary decisions have lost meaning in here.
Very inanimacy, following a trajectory. Post Brenschluss point.
Yeah.
When the plane gets up close, they start throwing pies at it. They hit it in the windshield. Eventually, Slothrop throws one of the ballast sandbags into like the pistons, I guess. Maybe at I assume the pistons where like the propeller is. Sort of,
I think
they've cut the
Schnorp did
propeller.
that.
Oh, does Schnorp do it? Someone throws it.
Schnorp does it. Slothrop misses his shot.
And then the plane doesn't turn back on. They hear it. They hear it fiddling and I guess misfiring and yelling.
It's incredibly funny that like this very expensive piece of technology, the airplane, and all of it's expensive. Like they brought arms with them, machine guns, or whatever type of guns they had. I don't know. They brought artillery.
Yeah.
And it's extremely funny that this very old piece of technology, I mean, not very old, but at this point, kind of old piece of technology, the hot air balloon and a bunch of pies and a sandbag takes down this fancy plane.
Slothrop feels bad about the pies, but Schnorp reminds him that, like, no, this is how the market is supposed to function, baby. It's dangerous out here in the air. Sometimes you lose some
cargo.
merchandise. Yeah.
Yeah, Schnorp seems to be having a great time. It's the most excitement he's seen in years. They talk some more about shadows.
Yeah, Andrew, do you know anything about this Earth shadow business? About how they talk about how the shadow moves faster than the speed of sound at certain parts of the Earth. Which I guess makes sense because it's just light moving,
Yeah,
and light moves faster than sound. But
I think it goes back to sort of at like a low incident angle. You're sort of over the Earth distance is traveling pretty substantially for like small changes in the sort of sun's angle relative to you.
Right. Just like it was an interesting. I feel like there was an interesting interface going on there of like the shadow silently moving faster than the speed of sound, which is, the speed that the rocket goes at.
What's interesting did this come up in the London chapter that like you never heard the rocket, but if you like saw its shadow? Did I just make that up?
I guess if you saw its shadow,
like that's a
that
problem.
Would be bad.
Yeah.
it's pretty small, all things considered. Just a lot of atmospheric phenomena in these chapters, which I guess makes sense for a ballooning enthusiast to chat about. So that or pies. Shall we take a break here?
That's a good idea.
Let's break. We'll be back to encounter a whole new kind of
world.
Guy just after this. Welcome back. Here is a summary for sequence 3.5. Chicherine's chapter introduces us to the mad scavenger himself, who is, quote, more metal than anything else. Where have we heard that before? Officially, he works for the USSR's Central Aerohydrodynamic Institute, but his compulsive personal mission is to kill his half-brother Enzian and destroy the Schwarzkommando. Back in the day, Chicherine was unceremoniously deployed to Kyrgyzstan to administer the adoption of the new Turkic alphabet and smoke a lot of opium. He worked there alongside Galina, the quote-unquote school marm, and the quote-unquote native school teacher Jacob Kulan, whose father was killed in a Kyrgyz uprising in 1916. There are many rumors about why Chicherine ended up there, including his dalliances with courtesans and his analgesic associations with IG Farben salesman Vimpa, but he's pretty sure it has something to do with Enzian and the fateful escapade their father spent AWOL from a Russian gunship off the coast of Southwest Africa. Chicherine figures his dossier on Enzian went inside his own file, and so it was off to the Alphabet Reform Plenary, where he once made an enemy of one Igor Blabadjian by forging a transliteration of the Quran into non-Arabic script under his name. Sometime later, Jacob Kulan and Chicherine journey to a remote village to question an elderly bard who tells them of a mystical Kyrgyz light that comes from, quote, a place where words are unknown, end quote. Chicherine seemingly finds it, but doesn't ever get it.
Whew. I feel like our listeners who have already read this book should sometimes give us a heads up when we've bitten off more than we can chew in one episode.
This would have been we couldn't have talked about the bananas in the airplane for the half hour to get us at least to 2 hours.
Oh, you know what they're always saying? Your podcast is too short.
Yeah, they are. I was saying that. Go longer.
At least one person said that. That was really kind of them.
So yeah, Chicherine. We start off with the zone in full summer, and then we don't see the zone for another 20 pages.
Turns out Chicherine is also giving V.
Yeah.
He's sort of... Well, as Pynchon says, he is more metal than anything else. He has steel teeth, a silver plate in his head, gold wirework threads in his right knee. So he's sort of got this,
which he likes that one because that one's for him. Only he knows about that.
Only
one.
that's a little secret he has. Yeah, it's giving a lot of the characters in V. It's giving whoever that pilot's name was that I forgot.
Hugh Godolphin.
Younger Godolphin.
Evan
Godolphin. Evan Godolphin
Evan
is the
Godolphin.
pilot.
I could not even remember his name when we were reading that book, much less now.
You mean Godrulfi the florist?
Yeah, he had a lot of metal going on. There was Bonko Shaftesbury and his like switch in his arm, and of course V herself. And now we have Cicerine, a mix of animate and inanimate.
Imagination is a word that has come up increasingly in this book.
It's interesting. He talks about it as being like, what is it? His pain, sort of. His Paine's hand-fashioned seal, which I thought was interesting because I think we've seen these sort of mixtures of animate and inanimate in the body happen for a variety of reasons. In Godolphin's case, it was, I guess, also related to pain, but it was because of a sort of disfiguration that occurred. In V's case, I'm not exactly sure.
Unclear, but related to some extent to like immortality.
Yeah. And like slowly replacing parts of your body to extend over time. And in this case, it's almost like a badge of overcoming pain.
He definitely prides himself in being kind of like a real tough guy, like a real, being hard. Talks about him coming from a long line of nihilists who is described as bomb throwers and jubilant assassins. Although he does sort of at the end of this subsection concede that he's sort of at risk of falling into the hazards of love with all of his women who he sleeps with. And he seems sort of down on himself about that.
Yeah, I like that Slothrop and Gailey are correct in their estimation that, like, he's got Gailey's all over the zone.
He's got Gailey's in different area codes.
I think one thing we talked about in V especially was the kind of Darth Vader conundrum of, like, the relationship between humanity and becoming, quote unquote, more machine than man. And in an interesting way, I think Cicerine is kind of subverting that, where he does have inanimate parts inside of him, but it almost makes him feel more human and alive and sort of like manly because of the like what they represent.
It's almost like he has the rocket inside of him.
Yeah, potentially. It's interesting that he seems like the only person who thus far is like ostensibly interested in the rocket, but doesn't actually care about the rocket. Really, just the rocket is his excuse to go after Enzian, whose existence he believes is the cause of his long suffering.
Yeah, he doesn't really seem to care that much about the rocket itself.
Which is rare for someone in this book.
That's true.
In a book where everybody is obsessed with the rocket.
I appreciate that Pynchon clarified, in case there was any confusion, that he was not related to the famous Cicerine.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we discussed that several chapters ago. And
we did indeed.
Glad we got that all cleared up.
I wrote down here in my notes, immortal versus mortal state.
Like the idea of the state that persists longer than the individuals in it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Is the immortal state.
Yeah, which is the bureaucratic ideal that some of the other characters are sort of trying to bring together, where it's like, we're not bound by like political ideologies or individuals or even like individual desires. In Ned Pointsman's case, it's more about like, market operations and sort of paperwork that persists from person to person, which is not what this Chicherin is interested in. He's in fact interested in demolishing a state of the zone Herero. But enough about what is currently happening in the book. The rest of this chapter is an extended flashback that flashes even further back on several occasions while remaining pretty much exclusively in the present tense, which is always an exciting choice this book makes.
Yeah. So where was Chicherin in the 1930s?
Yeah, what is the
It's a harder question than you might think, Andrew.
The proper name of this Seven Rivers country, formerly Semiriech Oblast.
And what is it today?
Nowadays, it's parts of Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan.
Thank you.
And I'll link to this in the show notes, but there was a good post that I found very helpful on r/ask historians or whatever, where someone who was not super familiar with Pynchon necessarily, but was familiar with this kind of area and era, was explaining a lot about the sort of political circumstances around these various ethnic groups. And in particular mentions that, like, it is purposefully or not kind of unclear whether the people who are being referred to as Kyrgyz here are, like, would nowadays be understood as Kyrgyz or as Kazakhs, or, like, where precisely we're located, and depending on how both the Russian Empire and the USSR kind of administered these things, those categories change over this precise period. But suffice it to say, this text uses Kyrgyz to refer to most of the quote-unquote native population. I mean, they are the native population, I guess. Nomadic peoples.
This section really brought to light for me that my geography knowledge of Central Asia is lacking somewhat. I had to whip out a map.
That's fine. This book should come with a big map,
it
like
really
a fantasy
should.
novel.
It really
map
should.
Of the whole world? You just want an atlas?
At a few different periods in time.
It should be one big map, and then a big map of the globe, and then it should zoom in on the Boston suburbs.
And North Germany.
Southwest Africa.
Southeast London.
Yeah.
Wow.
You could do it. That's like, what, 10 pages? Tops?
Easy. Just a Thomas Pynchon atlas would be a good Christmas stocking stuffer. If any of the patrons want to send us a little more.
We should get a P.O. box. That'd be a good project after our cookbook, which we forgot to add the custard pies to,
Oh
of
my
course.
God, yeah, I gotta have custard pies.
Oh my.
And the K rations. We got to get some vintage. We could do like one of those YouTube channels that opens like MREs from 70 years ago and sees if they're still good. Y'all ever see those?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
All right. So he is here in the early Stalin days with Galina, who we've already mentioned, Luba, who is her dear friend, and like another woman who's stationed there. They're teaching people about the new Turkic alphabet. How much did y'all know about the new Turkic alphabet coming into this?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. I mean, you put together a little bit from the context, but that link you sent to the group chat was pretty helpful as well to fill in.
Yeah. What did you learn about it from?
We learned that the various languages of Central Asia don't have their own alphabet. They have been using Arabic, I guess, after the introduction of Islam, although I guess that doesn't really fit that well with the desires of the Soviet Union. During the Tsarist, like, Russian Empire, I guess they're minority groups inside the Russian Empire, but, you know, the majority groups in these countries or in these regions were being suppressed. But then under Stalin and the Soviet Union, they sort of pivoted, and to try to bring everyone into the fold, they wanted to raise literacy and get their own alphabet, and they still didn't want to go with Arabic, but they also didn't want to go with Cyrillic because of its ties to the Tsarist regime. So they go with a Latinate alphabet because it's viewed as neutral.
I had no idea about that, and I found it so interesting. I did not know that the early Soviet Union tried to Latinize. They even tried to Latinize Russian to like eliminate the Cyrillic. Had no idea. That kind of fell by the wayside eventually, but so yeah, this is what Chicherin is assigned to do.
Yeah, we later find out he gets on like a specific letter subcommittee, and it's sort of the jobs of the different subcommittees to negotiate how you're going to spell words. Because I guess on top of the standard English 26-carat letters, there's several more that are symbols that I wouldn't know how to pronounce. They come up in the book, and they sort of have to go back and forth on, do you want to spell this word with this variant of the letter G or that variant of the letter G?
Which is a pretty funny way to like bureaucratize the adoption of a new language or alphabet.
Well, in a very sort of like parodic way of illustrating the Soviet bureaucracy that Chicherin is a victim of. Where, like, clearly some things break bad for him, but exactly why, what causes him to get sent all the way out here, he is kind of unsure of. And no one is really sure.
I guess, I mean, push back a little bit on the bureaucratization thing. I mean, I guess it is bureaucratic to sit there and argue about what kind of G you want to use. But if there is no written alphabet, like, you kind of have to do that.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Like there's only like the one example. Like Korean is like the only example of a language where there's like a known person who made the alphabet for it, and he, I guess, unilaterally did that. But like at some point, or like all other languages are just sort of amalgamated over time, which is why like English spelling is so messed up.
It just doesn't seem like, and maybe I'm not quite understanding this correctly, but it doesn't seem like anyone from the Kyrgyz community is making these decisions.
Oh yeah, they've definitely exported it out to the capital kind of thing. Like it is sort of an act of a colonizer, but I guess the want to have a spelling system that fits perfectly to your language is a goal that would be sort of inherently bureaucratic. Although, yeah, if you had native speakers doing it, it would probably be better than having some random guy who you've exiled to go do it in his like Teach for America role.
It's just interesting. It reminds me a little bit of like what happened in Ireland with like a lot of the like Gaelic being sort of forcibly replaced with English, and then more recently like communities bringing the original like Gaelic spellings back. It's not exactly that, but it's definitely something political going on with the language. And
well, it's interesting. I was digging into a little bit of this, and like one of the things that the Soviet Union is doing around this time is actually like promoting these kinds of like ethnic and national identities, and like the idea of coming up with a standardized alphabet for some of these peoples and ethnic groups is like, you are the Kyrgyz. Like that is you like that's this promotion of ethnicity to some extent is a function of the Soviet state at this time for a variety of reasons, and it like goes hand in hand with this kind of like literacy program.
Interesting. It's a little bit of a different situation.
I guess it's worth pointing out. Although, no, I mean, well, to Duri's point, I think in that Reddit post, they do talk about trying to do the same thing to like Russian Koreans and Russian Chinese, as a way of breaking their ties to, I guess, the Koreans and the Chinese in China and Korea. Wow, there was another half of that I was going to say. Patrick, what did you say right before I started talking?
Oh, about the sort of like promotion of like ethno-nationalist identity. Yeah.
Stalin isn't Russian, right? Like Stalin's a Georgian.
Yeah.
So it makes sense when like the head honcho is not ethnically Russian, that you would then get promotion of peoples who aren't ethnically Russian. And that would be a thing he was maybe more passionate about than some people would have been.
Yeah, and it also goes hand in hand in like the idea of the Soviet Union. I mean, I'm by no means an expert on this, but like it's not necessarily imperially consolidating power as the Russian Empire. The idea is that you would set up, you know, somewhat more independently organized states that are under the larger banner, I guess, ideally, but obviously there's a totalitarian bent to that, and like takeover expansionist.
Yeah, mode. If you're like nation planning, I guess the more willing the participants in the nation are, the better it goes for you. I guess that's an issue that the Soviet Union had the whole time.
And of course, the literacy programs are instruments of propagandizing, like.
Yeah, the sort of soft power aspect of it.
Yeah, is more effective if you can read the propaganda. And then Chicherin, by the end of the chapter, like even kind of sees this working, where he sees he sees
the death to police poster.
Yeah,
the new
kill
alphabet.
The police commissioner signs. He says, and somebody does. This alphabet is really something. So, you know, a lot going on here. Although this definitely feels like a Thomas Pynchon has like recently read some books about a place and time in history and is excited to write a chapter about it.
Boy, was he excited when he learned about the new Turkish alphabet.
You think his like wife is just like getting him books for Christmas and is like, babe, I know you've been having writer's block, so here's a history of the Kyrgyz language.
Yeah, probably.
We get sort of is the other side to this attempt at unification, a description of what happened to Jacob's father, who was killed during a genocide perpetrated by the Russians on the Kazakhs and the Kyrgyz, the Sarts and the Dungans and other local ethnic groups.
Yeah, so I was reading this began as a reaction to conscription of Muslims into the Russian military during World War I. And it led to a bunch of deaths and exiles and flights to China. I think this relates pretty directly to the Zone Hereros. This idea sort of like focalized through Jacob, where he says, thinking through the logic of the sort of oppressor, the Russian settlers, this native uprising was supposed to be the doing of foreigners, an international conspiracy to open a new front in the war, more Western paranoia based solidly on the European balance of power. How could there be Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Eastern reasons? Hadn't the nationalities been happy? Hadn't 50 years of Russian rule brought progress, enrichment? Which is sort of, I think, the idea that Pynchon is playing with, that the British invent a kind of false flag operation of the Schwarzkommando, totally ignorant of the fact that there is actually a kind of like revolutionary cell of Hereros in the zone who are ready to kind of act of their own accord. not as the result of being manipulated by foreign powers.
That's interesting.
Thank you. I thought it was.
I wanted to say that because I was mulling it over,
Thinking about it.
but I realized the listeners can't hear me chew on a thought.
Mulling. Yeah, if only they could.
Chomp chomp.
I also liked that Chicherin doesn't even remember Galina very much, although it seems they were at least somewhat intimate. But remembers her like the shape of an alphabet, the procedure for field stripping a Mosin. Just like she's an embodied memory, but nothing more than that.
I feel like there's a lot of, sorry, I haven't moved on from this paragraph about the sort of Central Asian revolt. I feel like there's a lot of imagery across these chapters about hunting. Like Slothrop feels like he's being hunted.
And nature in general.
The Herero people were hunted.
Mm-hmm.
These people are described as being hunted like wild game. I feel like there's a lot of hunting going on with the rockets and the rocket parts and the rocket engineers. I don't have a greater point to make there, but I feel like that's a theme that I've been kind of like noting in the margins as we've been moving through here, is this sort of recurrence of people hunting other people.
I think you're right. Following his father's death, Jacob is under the now that the Georgian, aka Stalin, has come to power, proclaiming to be kind to the nationalities. Jacob has become sort of has this paper existence, quote unquote, as an educated native speaker. So he has become part of this paper machine of making more papered things, promoting literacy. Galina, meanwhile, has this recurring dream fantasy of seeing herself as a Central Asian giantess, sort of stomping out the cities.
We've had a lot of, I guess, like Slothrop and Gelly make themselves into giant shadows. And then she has this vision of herself as a giant.
There's a Rilke quote about that takes us back to Enzian's, I guess, Weissman-influenced interest in German poetry. About an angel stomping out with its foot a market.
We forgot to mention that Galina has a familiar, sort of like Gelly. She has a hawk.
Well, is her hawk Luba?
That's what I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Luba's a woman.
No, I think Luba's a hawk.
I thought Luba was a woman.
What? Oh,
What they called her a hawk.
they say she's
As
a pretty hawk,
Yeah,
and she flies.
I think it starts, Jacob gets a look from Luba suggesting falconhood.
But she's not a falcon.
I thought they were comparing her, desperate
Yeah, I thought
Luba
they
about
meant
the
more that
edges.
she had ornithological features.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I do think there is a comparison to the other bird familiar that we have encountered.
I can't get ahead in this section. Every time I think I have something sorted out, turns out I don't.
Maybe we'll be able to sort this one out. This question that Chicherin has of Enzian, his black doppelganger, who must somewhere in Germany have his own version of Jacob Kulan. Potentially Weissman? Is Weissman sort of the like native German who introduces Enzian to the foreign land.
I guess. Technically, yeah. I feel like the vibe is really different, though.
Oh, the vibe's super different, yeah.
I feel like Chicherine and Weissman are much more similar, and Enzian and Kulan are maybe more of a piece.
No, I think in terms of power relations for sure, but I think there's I guess like a foreigner to native relationship there.
Yeah, sure.
Weissman is teaching Enzian about Rilke, and Jacob is moving Chicherine towards this Kyrgyz light from the poet. Which is the thing we cut back and forth to over the course of this chapter, that Chicherine and Jacob are riding into the Badlands. Chicherine is on a horse named Snake. It's a hell of a horse.
I liked Snake.
He was in Saudi Arabia being paid not to participate in rodeo competitions because he's too good at being a bucking bronco.
He's homicidal.
Perfect mount for manly man Chicherine.
Yeah, once Jacob breaks him, mostly breaks him.
I like Snake.
They kind of leave it with this question of Snake may only be sort of biding his time, waiting for his moment to toss off Chicherine. A calculating horse. Not unlike that conniving rabbit.
Indeed, yeah.
I like that most of my commentary on these three sections has sort of exclusively had to do with various animals that are brought up.
Aardvark, rabbit,
horse,
owl.
I gotta seize onto what I can. Not an owl. Just kidding.
The regular old lady.
This equestrian statue that comes up, I think I took it as, speaking of Russia, a Pushkin reference. Pushkin has a poem called The Bronze Horseman about the statue. I think it's Peter the Great in square in St. Petersburg.
We get a breakdown on some of the reasons that Chicherine might have been exiled, some of the sort of rumor mill reasons, at least.
Yeah, number one, courtesan. Slept with the wrong courtesan, Chicherine.
The courtesan who kind of seemed like Catherine the Great?
Yeah.
Because she had sex with a horse?
Yeah.
Which was the thing they said about Catherine the Great.
That'd be pretty great.
I think they made up a lot of stuff about Catherine the Great because she had a lot of lovers.
She might have been Catherine the Great. This could be an immortal courtesan. That could be your problem right there, Chicherine.
Be V.
Whoa.
Yeah, we don't know what V was up. V could have gone straight from Stalinist Russia into wherever she was to Malta, I guess.
No, this would have been the late 1920s. Yeah, I guess it would have been after Foppel, pre-Malta.
Around France time, around V in Love.
Paris?
Yeah.
She was in Paris right before World War One.
Yeah.
She and Chicherine could have bonded over their mutual sort of metallic features.
Yeah, there you go. This is my new
natural
canon.
Magnetism.
I really, really liked that back at her dacha, they played Fisherman and Fish, Terrorist and State, Explorer and Edge of the Wave Green World.
Again with the hunting a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, hunting, conquest.
Mm-hmm.
The other rumor is about Vimpa, who I think we met at one of Peter Sachs's seances.
Or I believe it.
Does that sound right to you? Came up somewhere. What I couldn't figure out here is how homoerotic this encounter was supposed to be read. because I picked up that vibe. It sort of reminded me of the scene in The Great Gatsby where sort of famously argued over in high school English classes among teachers or students, respectively, who insist that Nick can't possibly be gay, where he goes up to a guy's hotel room to look at his pictures, quote unquote. This is the vibe I got from this of like, yeah, come back to my room. I'll show you my like vials and pharmaceuticals.
I think you could read some of this as sort of flirty. You know, think of chess. That's kind of got a nagging air to it.
Yeah, how could they have failed to be observed? By and by, as the affair in its repressed and bloodless way proceeded, the Soviet chain of command, solicitous as any 19th century family, would begin to take simple steps to keep the two apart. Conservative therapy, Central Asia. And I guess the nominal reason on top of this is that IG Farben is like filled with corporate espionage spies, sending info back to Germany. But I thought it was a little suggestive, at least. Although no one, as far as I can tell, has talked about this in at least some of the scholarship or like internet posts I could find. So maybe I'm making it up.
I'll have to do a closer reread.
Yeah, when you find the time.
There's a number of things I missed in this section. I thought a hawk was a woman. No, a woman was a hawk.
I also thought the woman was the hawk until I went back to it to like really clean up for my summary, and then I didn't even mention her because the summary was getting quite long already.
I'm not sure she was that important in the scheme of things. Famous last words.
I'm sorry also to Chu Pyong, who I also cut from my summary, but
rude.
We can talk about him in a minute.
I was intrigued in this section, partially because I just read a very lengthy article about opioids and how they have gotten so much stronger than they ever were historically, as people have been, quote unquote, perfecting the chemical formulas. And also, anyways, I read a whole article about the like resurgence, quashing and re-resurgence of opioids in Estonia.
You're always reading articles.
You know that
this about
is
yourself?
what I do. This is what I do at 6 a.m. Anyways, I read that and then like promptly read this section and I didn't necessarily realize, I knew about opium, of course, but I didn't necessarily realize that like the development of a lot of synthetic opioids was starting to happen sort of in Nazi Germany.
Well, and I think it's interesting, too, that this is also the development of sort of intellectual property. Like the real thing that's being sold here, they talk about it, or Vimpa talks about it as being like a Paris dress shop. That like you take this molecule that is soon going to be taken off of, it's not public domain with drugs. What is it? Genericized or whatever. And then, but if you just like add a couple little bits hanging off of it, suddenly it's a different molecule and you can make it proprietary again.
Very mauve.
Uh-huh. So I like that, this kind of patent medicine business is actually the thing he's kind of explaining here.
Yeah, it's all business, but it also is it's all tied up in like addiction and pain, but also the war and death, in the sense that like the same company was also manufacturing the gas that was used in the gas chambers in the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
What was the line you quoted earlier about death transfigured?
Yeah, death to death transfigured. Instead of from death to life. Chicherin gets pretty hooked on these things, though, and becomes the, quote, raving snowman over the winter marshes. Having no decency at all in his engagements with the German field commanders. And I liked this bit that Citrine has a way of getting together with undesirable, sub-rosa enemies of order, counter-revolutionary odds and ends of humanity. He doesn't plan it, it just happens. He is a giant supermolecule with so many open bonds available at any given time, and in the drift of things, in the dance of things, howsoever others latch on. That's how you get a harem of informants.
We talk about Chu Piang.
Yeah. Citrine's habits endear him, I guess, to Chu Piang.
Who's sort of a caricature, stereotype.
Yeah, more so than I think a lot of characters in this book, of sort of like Chinese opium addict.
Yeah, I feel like they even describe him as such. Like he's made almost like a tourist attraction for people to come look at. It's got kind of a poverty tourism vibe. Not poverty, but like feels like an old Vice news article.
I'm gonna say he's officially described as a swamper.
I didn't know that word. I had to look it
up.
up.
I'm not really sure what a swamper is. I mean, I guess that's a profession of some kind having to do with the swamp, but
no, you would think.
Okay, good.
There's even a Wikipedia page for it. It's occupational slang term for an assistant worker, unskilled helper, maintenance person, or someone who performs odd jobs in support of a skilled worker.
Oh.
He's elsewhere in this chapter called
That's
a factotum, which is another word that I feel like Pynchon really likes and uses occasionally. I think it came up several times in V. But yeah, he's just like a laborer they have there.
Example Google gave was an assistant to a river rafter.
I mean, maybe it came from the swamps.
Sure. Oh, I think it's because Wikipedia talks about river outfitting substantially. Sure. I don't know who's writing Wikipedia these days. What it used to be.
So yeah, he is definitely, I guess, like part of the local flavor as far as the I don't know, visiting wealthy are concerned.
Him and these fancy toilets.
But you know, Thomas Pynchon loves a fancy toilet.
I had to call it out. I feel like we have to call out whenever we see a fancy toilet in Thomas Pynchon.
Where's the fancy toilet here again?
It's on page 352, sort of towards the end of the paragraph.
Oh, this is the big sled that the rich people are touring the countryside on.
Is it a toilet or a sled? Is this another Hawk Woman situation?
Where's it talk about?
It says it's oak toilets rubbed to a deep red and hand carved into mermaid faces.
Oh no, yeah, they're toilets on the sled.
They're toilets on the sled.
They describe it as like it's like a triple decker sled that is like moving across the landscape, carrying all these rich people.
That's luxury right there.
It's as big as a ferry boat.
I bet V would ride on one of those sleds.
Oh yeah,
I would love to ride on one of those
toilet on
sleds.
a sled. That's crazy. Decadence.
I don't remember if it was the Pynchon Wiki or the Weisenberger Companion, but one of them compares it to the big carriage at the start of the book that's carrying all the people through the devastation of the like Crystal Palace stuff. Maybe. Laszlo Yampf comes back up as he's talking to Vimpa. The National Research Council and the sort of DuPont synthesis. Once again, we've got like an oil, plastics, pharmaceutical connection.
Yeah, and then after that is where Duri sort of alluded to this earlier, the pain and painkillers sort of being likened to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, where there are, I guess, unseparable characteristics.
Yeah, I thought the line "results have not been encouraging" was darkly funny with regards to trying to tease apart pain and addiction.
And this idea that speaking of Marx and Engels, because Vimpa is getting frustrated that Chicherin is only understanding this through sort of de rigueur Soviet Marxism, where it's like, well, yeah, but these are all just materialist market functions. And Vimpa says, like, yeah, no, we know how to cause pain. Pain comes from these market functions of machines and war and poisons in food, industrial accidents, etc. But like, addiction doesn't have anything to do with the market. That's all you. That's all in your brain. So what we're trying to figure out how to do is tap into that market. I looked up that Vimpa gets reassigned to the United States in Kimnico of New York, which was a real like IG Farben shell company in the United States that operated as like a industrial espionage company. But that was real.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then here we get what Chicherin's belief is in why he's been sent to Kyrgyzstan, which is that while he was looking for records about his father, he found out that he's got this half-brother Inzian, and that information was later transmogrified into his own file on record, and it's been a stain ever since then.
Speaking of bureaucracy, it's like he goes into the bureaucracy to find something, but then the paper trail that he creates, becomes identified with him.
It sounds kind of like what happened with the Schwarzkommando. Like, you dug into something a little too far, or you manifested something that no one else knew about.
And also, like our friend Stencil from V, sort of constructing the conspiracy by looking for it, which I will keep harping on.
Yeah, I feel like every time I see the word dossier, it doesn't mean a good thing for that character.
Chicherin at least found some hard evidence.
That's true, yes. Okay, so what happened with Elder Chicherin? Back in the Russo-Japanese War in 1904.
His ship stopped in, I guess, Southwest Africa, and there was a really bad storm, so bad that some people committed suicide. He decided to step off his boat for a little bit, slept with a Herero woman, but then left and returned to his boat and sailed away. And then that Herero woman turned out to be Enzian's mother.
Yeah. It took me a while to realize, like, why is the Russian gunship in Southwest Africa? And then I had to look back and find that it's coming from the Black Sea, and so it has to go all the way around.
Yeah. Russia's tough one to be a naval officer in Russia going to support the guys stuck in Port Arthur.
Yeah, I simply wouldn't do much naval combat if I were Russia fighting Japan.
It didn't work out for him. Very famously. I mean, yeah, what does it say? Yeah, sailed 20,000 miles and then just got their ass handed to them.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah,
think about the map. It's insane.
Why wouldn't they?
They can't sail north because it's the Arctic Circle. So they have to go through like temperate water from the Baltic Sea all the way to like Far East Russia.
There's nothing they could sail, sort of.
Have you been reading about the Strait of Hormuz recently?
Well, no, but there's a whole nother coast to Russia that's right by Japan.
Yeah, but if your boats are in the Black Sea...
Those ships are already... So during the Russo-Japanese War, those ships were all blockaded in... Like, all of the Pacific Fleet was blockaded in Port Arthur and was getting destroyed. And so Russia had to send reinforcements, but they can't go through, like, the Arctic Circle because of the ice, I guess. And so they have to sail around Europe, around Africa, around India, around China, up
That's
to
crazy.
Japan.
So you can imagine why you might be trying to go AWOL after you're not even halfway through this trip.
You haven't done like one of the hard parts yet?
Yeah. Did the Suez Canal exist then?
No.
That's a
I
real
don't think
shame
so.
for them. They could have skipped
Well-
Africa. Isn't that right? That's the one by Egypt.
Yeah. Oh, it says it opened in 1869. I guess it was not open to the Russian military.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise they could have cut through there
For
and
more
the Red
on-
Sea.
For more on crises relating to the Suez Canal, I refer you to Thomas Pynchon's V.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So anyways, just a little geography.
I hate to be on that journey.
Yeah, as he so they
If we remember from V, the British held the Suez Canal at this time,
right.
which is why the Russians weren't using it.
Right.
I see. This was
Checks out.
They were not. This was okay. This was World War One.
Well, this is before World War
Before
One.
World War One.
Russia and Britain were not on good terms. Question mark.
I guess
Yeah,
Britain and Japan were on better terms. I'm not 100% on that.
One way or another, they had to go the long way around.
They had to go the long
Yeah.
way.
For which they needed coal for their gunships, which is why they're loading up on coal in Southwest Africa. Which gets us to a lot of exciting themes hitting back again. The slowly carbonizing faces of the men he thought he knew as they sort of turn black, as it were, from the coal dust, men turning to coal, a conspiracy of carbon, though he never phrased it as carbon. It was power he walked away from, the feeling of too much meaningless power flowing wrong. He could smell death in it. And so the narrator writes that he goes off of the ship and finds, as it were, a quote-unquote honest blackness of a solemn Herero girl. Kind of unclear exactly how long they spend together, but I guess the ship is only there a week, so...
We were going back and forth between a week and a one-night stand.
Yeah, what do you think, Andrew? Be the tiebreaker. When I was writing the summary, Duri had a thought about it.
I feel like the first, when I read it, I got the impression that it was a couple of days.
Split the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll say a couple days.
I mean, they eat multiple meals, it sounds like. The man and woman stayed in bed and drank curry, which is brewed from potatoes, teas, and sugar. They learned each other's languages enough to talk a little bit. It's got to have been more than one night.
Yeah, until he goes back.
Yeah.
I thought it was roughly 5 days because they said the ship was in port for a week, and then he went AWOL 2 days after the storm started.
My assumption was that, like, if you came back onto the ship, like,
Multiple days later.
12 hours later, you could be like, oh yeah, I was here the whole time. You just didn't see me. I was shoveling coal over there. But if you were there, like, 72 hours later, they might start asking more questions.
I don't know. If half the people committed suicide, I feel like they'd be glad you're back.
Yeah, that's true. Chicherin is already born at this point because
Yeah, he's back in Russia.
Elder Chicherin never makes it back.
Baby Chicherin.
Baby Chicherin. Enzian eventually enters Germany in 1926, applies for German citizenship, and then some mix-up happens with the files. But
And then we get into these letter committees.
yeah.
Oh, the letter committees.
So this is the VTSKNTA. It's then transliterated. It's in Russian here, and I looked it up at one point, but I've lost it at this point. But I think this was a real conference that happened in Baku.
Wow.
Patrick, how do you say this letter?
I was going to look that up, and then I didn't. Let's see.
Seems to be a kind of G, a voiced uvular plosive.
Let's see.
Duh.
G. G. It looks kind of like a tether ball.
Oh, that's a great description. I was like, what is this thing? Tetherball.
A voiced uvular plosive is a G.
Like a G or a J?
Yeah. G.
G. I mean, G. Yeah, okay. I just knew Turkic alphabet. I can probably find this letter real quick. It's the one that looks kind of like
a tether ball.
A tether ball. I'm not seeing it here. Oh, wait. I found it. That symbol, I think, is called a GA. GHA, if you want to look it up. It usually represents a voiced velar fricative, but is sometimes used for a voice uvular fricative. So the voice uvular fricative would be like the French, or I guess the German. The voiced velar fricative would be like a ra. Yeah, so it's ra.
Oh, it says it's kind of like the G in aqua.
Ra.
Qua.
Ra.
Qua.
It's ra. This is good audio content.
Is it? Yeah.
There is a reference to Gravity's Rainbow in the pop culture. It is the only pop culture section reference on the Wikipedia
for this
page
particular symbol.
Ra.
You know, not all symbols get a pop culture reference. It's really nice.
I know we were just besmirching Wikipedia editors, but this sentence is really good. Chicherin's particular contribution is the invention of the letter Ra, which is thus perhaps the only obsolete letter of a Central Asian language that may be familiar to the non-specialist English reading public through a widely circulated novel. Shout out to that Wikipedia editor. That is very good. What a great journey we've been on. So alongside the Ra committee is the committee that is dedicated to making every vowel into a schwa. And there's a nose fetishist who likes touching famous party members' noses. Very Gogolian, I would say.
He's on the Theta committee. It's probably not how it's pronounced in this language, but it's the Theta symbol.
Well, they keep forgetting in the NTA that it's I think is that, and not Russian F.
Creating confusion.
But yeah, there's the Igor of the G committee wants to steal the Ra from the Ra committee and just turn it into a G. And in order to stop that, Chicherin forges the Quran transliteration, which rouses the anger of the Arabic speakers in the room.
Yeah, they go sort of a tit for tat on pranking each other.
As one does it.
Starts with stealing pencils, rearranging keyboard on your typewriter, sawing the legs out of the chair, publishing very sacred texts in a new language. Simple.
With the exception of maybe the chairs, I like that all of these pranks are sort of like all related to like language and writing in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Like the pencils, the typewriter, the rewriting of the Quran.
Yeah. There's a weird moment where Igor is sort of ushered into a room to begin some mysterious journey. The first thing he learns is how to vary his index of refraction. He can choose anything between transparent and opaque. After the thrill of experimenting is worn off, he settles on a pale banded onyx effect.
This is very reminiscent, it felt like, of that one teenager who could change the color of his skin.
Yeah. Do you
I'm
think
not-
this is how he did it? Is there a shadowy committee that is changing skin color?
Yeah, the fact that this is just sort of one paragraph, but yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but it sounds like he has the same superpower as that other guy, more or less.
What if this is what the black device does? The Schwarzgerät. It's my theory. I'm sticking with it. Comments here on the alphabetic nature of molecules. Again, this is just like, this feels straight out of Crying of Lot 49 about like information turning entropic space into rationalized, discrete, informatic sort of units that can be modulated, broken, recoupled, redefined, copolymerized. And this is maybe just what we do as humans, is divide things into units and polymerize them.
We missed on this journey a cookbook item.
What do we miss?
Trays of zapekanka and Georgian fruit soup.
Oh, yeah. That sounds good.
That sounds
I
delicious.
don't know what zapekanka is. Ooh, it's a cheesecake.
Ooh, gotta get that.
Yummy.
There's also the grape chiffon pie that someone has a conspiracy to hit Stalin in the face with. A lot of pies in these sections.
Mm-hmm.
So the alphabet works well enough. At least the police commissioner gets got. The magic that the shamans out in the wind have always known begins to operate now in a political way. Everyone is like becoming political in this book. Like things that may have been not apolitical or outside of the political order become co-opted into politics. So at long last, we come to the end of Chicherine and Jacob's journey. They find a village where there's an Ajtis singing duel. Which reminded me, isn't there also kind of like a Viking singing duel thing that happens sometimes? You know what I'm talking about? Did that show up in that TV show Vikings you watched, Duri?
I did not see that in the several episodes of Vikings that I watched.
A holmgong.
I don't think Ragnar Lothbrok engaged in any singing competitions.
You could also probably equate this to a rap battle.
Yeah.
To bring it to sort of a modern reference instead of Vikings.
Instead of an even older reference.
Yeah,
oh no,
exactly.
a holmgong is just a regular duel. I'm thinking of flighting or counter boasting. Yeah. Poetic exchanges, 5th century, Scots, Celts, etc., etc. It's in Beowulf. Regardless, these two are kind of like flirting with each other. Although the 4-line stanzas, first, second, and last lines all have to rhyme, reminds me of the structure of limericks, where the first, second, and last lines rhyme.
I feel like Thomas Pynchon saw this and was like, this is a limerick, and then I'm going to start writing my own. Although in both examples, they just rhyme with the same 3 words.
Well,
Or the
of
same
course,
word
these
3
are
times.
translated from Kyrgyz, so...
Well, but still, if it's translated, it still means that the original person is still saying the same 3 words.
Yeah. I don't really understand that, but I'm also sort of unfamiliar with this form of poetry, but it sounds cool.
Yeah, it sounds like a fun thing to do. It does say that there's one couple that went multiple years without speaking to each other after doing it. But these two seem to be having a good time.
I like them. I hope it works out well for them. There's also a funny line of the girl is making fun of her opponent's horse, who is just a little, nothing serious, but kind of heavy set. Well, fat, really. Really fat. The guy is not really good at it. I also like that everybody sort of goes, no laughs But Chicherin and Jacob are there to find an Akin, a wandering Kazakh singer, who also feels like sort of plucked as a stereotype from some tale of the East.
Are Chicherin and Jacob giving anyone else sort of like a Don Quixote
Big way, yeah.
vibe?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good call out.
Just like that first sentence where they're like, oh, they're riding down into the village, this pair. They sort of on a quest together.
Yeah, it feels very sort of medieval quest.
Got sort of our like sidekick character.
I think that is a good reference. So what do we make of the Akin song about the Kyrgyz light?
This reminded me, there's a book by a Kyrgyz author, which is actually set in Kazakhstan, but I think we've already said that this is kind of, or obviously Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan are close to each other, but I think Patrick was saying that this exact area was possibly also part of Kazakhstan.
Yeah, that's anyway. What that one guy on Reddit suspects, is that all of these people might probably be Kazakhs.
There's a famous book by Chingiz Aytmatov called The Day Lasts More Than 100 Years. Mm-hmm. And it's set in the 1950s, I guess, but has a plot point where they're going to their sort of ancestral burial ground, and they find that it has been subsumed inside the Baikonur Cosmodrome, like off-limit zone, and they watch a rocket be launched into the air.
Wow.
So I think it is worth pointing out that's what this reminded me of. And this sort of Kyrgyz light in the far distance, and the sort of black obelisk that rises up in the lyrics reminds me of the fact that Baikonur is where the Russians end up putting their rocket launching facility. And it's just around the corner.
Damn, Andrew. I was coming in here being like, I guess it's about the rocket, but I don't know. You killed that one. Yeah. There's a couple lines in this song stand out to me, including the place where words are unknown, given all the talk about information and linguistics that we've had throughout this very long sequence. And of course, the roar of its voice is deafness, the flash of its light is blindness, reminds me of the way that the V2 in all its angelic qualities are described. Yeah, I know very little about, I guess I didn't know much about the German or English rocket programs until reading this book, but I know even less about Soviet rocket programs. But it makes a lot of sense that this would be the connection to sort of Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, if that's where they were doing tests.
Yeah, they, as we just pointed out, don't have an ocean. It's easily accessible, the way that like Cape Canaveral sticks out into the Atlantic, and you wouldn't want to shoot a rocket. First off, you want to shoot a rocket off as close to the typically as close to the equator as you can get, and also traveling into the east so that you can use the spin of the Earth with you. You don't want to have to like accelerate to orbital velocity with the Earth spinning in the same direction as you. That's like a pain in the ass. So Russia doesn't really have that. And so they went to, I guess, their equivalent of the Atlantic Ocean, which was like the steppe. And we're just launching out over grasslands.
Fascinating. I don't even, I will say, Andrew, I think you edge out over the Weisenberger here in terms of thinking through the Kyrgyz light.
What does Weisenberger have?
Let's see. The Kyrgyz light is just, here's the entirety of the note. Pynchon's fiction.
Wow, that's a
That
real
feels a
cop
little
out.
weak. That feels a little weak.
Weisenberger.
You know, you don't always bat 1,000.
He had a big job ahead of him.
He did. It
I'll
is a
give him
good
that.
book, the Companion. Although I can finally reveal that it did spoil the Blacaro Weissman connection for me very early on, and I was kind of upset by that. I would have wanted to be like, Weissman.
I think I also got spoiled to that, but then did not remember who Weissman was, and was just like, okay, we'll find out his first name at some point. And it just didn't mean anything.
I guess that it's hardly a spoiler if it's just like, yeah, do you also happen to remember a minor character in a novel written 10 years beforehand? It's not like...
Spoiler alert.
It's not like Tony Stark's coming back as Doctor Doom. Although it kind of is, you know? All right, so the very last thing is that Chicherin rides into the desert, or into the steppe to find this light. The light which must change us to children. And we learn that he will reach the Kyrgyz light, but not his birth. He is no Akin, his heart was never ready. He will see it just before dawn. He will spend 12 hours then, face up in the desert, a prehistoric city greater than Babylon, lying in stifled mineral sleep a kilometer below his back. As the shadow of a tall rock rising to a point dances west to east. Etc., etc.
What do we think the city underneath him is? Because we kind of started, at least this series of episodes that we read, looking at the Herero people sort of holed away in the mountains and underground. And now Chicherin is sort of laying on top of a buried city.
I think there's a couple ways to take it. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Andrew.
I'm sort of drawing a blank for Central Asian mythical cities.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that is probably something there, although the Companion certainly doesn't have anything to say about it. But I also think that it has something to do with, like, minerals and the carbon and the stuff that is underground is in its own way a kind of city greater than Babylon.
Yeah, a kilometer underground is pretty deep for like rubble.
Like at the point where we're
rubble.
I guess I don't actually know Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan's relationship to like oil reserves.
I think there are oil reserves.
But no way they don't have oil.
That's kind of what I assumed this was that like it is the oil and the carbon that are compacted a kilometer underground. That, I mean, this could also be the large black rock if you're thinking of oil shooting up in a very There Will Be Blood kind of way.
Gotcha.
And, you know, as we've already seen in this chapter, like carbon turning white a kind of inauthentic black. Going back to the recurring image here. Or, given what Andrew just said, I could also see it as being like, this is time is kind of all out of joint, and this is the, like, ghost of the Cosmodrome or something. Just backwards instead of forwards. Well, I'd say that about does it. You have your head in your hands, Duri. Do you have any final thoughts or insights?
I have one final thought and insight. One is that, like, I both hate and love it when we are talking about a series of episodes and I realize there's a whole bunch of stuff I missed when I was reading it through the first one or even two times. And towards that point,
it is, yeah, no, that's,
you know,
that's why I love doing this with y'all.
I'm gaining more out of it because of you all, but you humble me also. As does Thomas Pynchon regularly humbles me. And on that note, I was thinking about, you know, how people always ask you if like there's one book that you would bring with you to a desert island.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've never really known the answer to that question. Because it's like, you don't like oftentimes your favorite book is like.
You love a slim little volume.
I love a slim volume. I also love a book that like really grips you and pulls you in, and you like, can really read it in one long sitting. But that's not the type of book you want with you on a desert island, because you're going to have to you don't know how long you're going to be on the desert island. You're going to have to read that book over and over and over and still be getting something new out of it. You don't want something you can get through in 2 days. And I was thinking that, Gravity's Rainbow might be a good contender for an island book, because I feel that even after we've read this book together and we've discussed it for many, many hours, and I have in many cases listened back to our discussions about it, I feel like I could reread this whole book and get a ton of new stuff out of it.
I think we would all be amazing at understanding this book once we finish it a first time. We could go back through it and be like, this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
What magisterial foreshadowing.
I feel that Thomas Pynchon writes for people who reread.
Yeah.
I don't reread a lot of books, but I might be rereading Thomas Pynchon.
Well, that's the James Joyce boast is like, I'm going to write a book that's going to keep people thinking about it for, 100 years.
That's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's pretty, I'm impressed.
Final thoughts, Andrew?
No, I'm pretty fried, I feel like.
This book will do it. Yeah. We've gone late as well, in case you feel our energy flagging at points. That is why. So hopefully you're listening to this and you're more alert than we are right now in our zaniness. Listener, thank you for listening to Pynchon Pals. I should also say I don't really have any final thoughts. I think I just thought of that oil thing in the moment, and I think that's about as good as I'm going to get this evening. So I'm going to leave that there. Thank you to Andrew Tillett.
Thank you.
And to Duri Long.
Thank you very much
for joining me. If you like what we're doing here, we'd love it if you left us a review on Apple Podcasts or on your podcatcher of choice, wherever you like. It's nice to get a review. We have gotten a couple emails that are in the backlog, and one of these days when we have our right minds on, we'd like to answer. We've gotten at least a couple questions about Gravity's Rainbow that are worth doing on air. So if you send one in, we have read it. But we're all too sleepy right now to do one. On our next episode, we'll be reading episodes, what do I have here? 3.6 through 3.10, which is another hearty chunk of book, but this one has more sequences in it, so I'm hoping it's a little breezier. The one after that is about 40 pages in one single sequence, so that'll be its own episode. If you'd like to get in touch with the show or submit a question to be answered on air, as I mentioned, you can reach us at pynchonpals@gmail.com. To support the work we do here, you can head to patreon.com/pynchonpals. Our theme music is Horology by the inimitable King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, released under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives license on the today relevant album Polygon Dwanaland. Pynchon Pals is produced and edited by me, Patrick Fiorilli. You can find more of my work alongside my newsletter, Critical Theory Craft, at my website, www.patf.io. Until next time,
we're going dark, Aardvark.
And how long you been thinking of that one?
That was good.
I actually just came up with it on the Thesaurus page while you were doing the outro.
I'm glad. I was looking up if the TV show of Arthur had any ending thing that it ended with. Apparently it didn't end with anything, but it had an interstitial.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, DW would come out and talk to you.
Yeah, there was a segment called "And Now a Word from Us Kids."
Oh,
and then they would end with "And now back to Arthur," and you'd go into the second half of the episode.
I do remember that.
So I was going to say, and now back to Arthur, as if this was the entirety of the interstitial. And there was another 11-minute cartoon coming up.
In which DW reads Thomas Pynchon.
So I was looking this up.
Yeah.
About the shadows. And Google agrees with me that the lower the angle, the faster you should move, which I'm confused as to why he says that as you go towards the equator, it should be moving faster.
I mean, sometimes Pynchon just gets things wrong. I feel like that's a secret that the internet and doesn't always want to admit, or like Pynchon sort of scholarship doesn't always admit. I think he's just wrong sometimes. It's like a weird thing where I feel like with no other author is given such a benefit of the doubt that he is just like an encyclopedic wellspring of perfect knowledge about like math, physics, history, culture. And like he clearly knows a lot, but like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like he just gets things wrong. Shall we zip back into it?
Yeah, before we do, the Cincinnati Zoo has a lot of really good aardvark videos just for future reference. They're like pig rabbits.
Yeah. Andrew, would you like to hear Weisenberger talk about the shadow?
Yeah, definitely.
Weisenberger says, Schnorp or Pynchon is roughly correct. Relative to an equinoctial sun, a point on the Earth's equator spins roughly 1,100 miles per hour. But here, at 51.5 degrees of northern latitude, and with the sun nearly at its northernmost solstical at latitude, the shadow would be moving at approximately 640 miles per hour. Similarly, over the French area of Carcassonne at 43.2 degrees, the shadow would be speeding along at roughly 770 miles per hour, 32 miles per hour faster than the speed of sound. Still, a shadow, quote unquote, never breaks the sound barrier.
Yeah, the higher the latitude, the faster the shadow.
Yeah. But, yeah, relative to an equinoctial sun, the equator...
What does equinoctial mean?
I don't know. A point on the Earth's equator spins at roughly 1,100 miles an hour. So that's just a point on the equator. That's not the movement of the shadow. So I guess it approaches the speed of the point on the equator.
But it doesn't move relative to the point that it's above.
Yeah, I'm confused here. This is going to be post-pod anyway, so listener, if you know how sun equator shadows work, please write in. If you're one of the brave few who listens through all the post-pod. Don't want to jump back in? Are you still reading about aardvarks, Duri?
I'm watching an aardvark dig a hole.
Okay, well, you do that, and I'm going to go ahead and read the next.
I'll be back into the podcast. We'll come back into it. Just share that for your future reference.
Thank you.
Okay, we're refocused.
This is what I'm going to watch after the pod. Yeah. Go to sleep. Aardvark to decompress.
Yep.
We'll need it.
Bedtime.